In my past life, my mom found over 300 photos of me changing clothes that my brother had secretly taken. Faced with my dad's words, "He's only 13, he doesn't know any better," I deleted the photos and covered for him. From then on, my brother escalated his behavior, starting to pick the locks on my bedroom door. Later, those photos appeared in a school group chat with the title, "My Sister, Free to Watch." I was cyberbullied into dropping out of school and attempted suicide by cutting my wrists 3 times. My parents only said one thing: "You're the older sister, don't stoop to his level." Given a second chance at life, I returned to the day my mother found those photos. This time, I won't be the one who has to die. 1. I opened my eyes and saw the dusty chandelier hanging from the living room ceiling. My head was throbbing with a dull ache. In my ears was the hushed, furious yelling of my mother. "Jo Mehua, are you crazy, filming this stuff? What if your sister finds out?" My body stiffened abruptly. This sentence, this scene, I remember. In my past life, right here in this living room, my mother found over 300 voyeuristic photos on my brother Luchen's phone. Every single one was a picture of me being secretly photographed while changing in my bedroom. The angles were invasive, as if taken through the crack of a door or a gap in the curtains. Some were even taken through the vent above the bathroom door while I was showering. Over 300. The span lasted for half a year. That day, the 15-year-old me was trembling with fear, and my mom's first reaction wasn't to call the police or protect me. Instead, she said, "Delete it now, don't let your father find out." Later, my dad, Lu Jiangwo, found out anyway. His reaction was even more direct. He called me over and said, "He's only 13, he doesn't know any better, you're the older sister, just delete the photos. Let's pretend this never happened." I deleted them. I obediently deleted them. One by one, then those photos showed up in the whole school's group chat. The headline read, "My Sister, Free to Watch." Everyone pointed and whispered behind my back, calling me a slut, a whore. I dropped out of school and slit my wrists 3 times. The deepest cut hit an artery. All my parents said was, "You're the older sister, don't argue with him." I didn't argue, I died. That was in my past life. Now, I slowly sat up. I immediately noticed the phone in my mother's hand. Jo Mehua was frantically clicking, "Select all, delete." I dashed over with a speed that defied my 15-year-old body. I snatched the phone right out of her hand. "Mom, don't delete this yet." Jo Mehua froze. My fingers flew across the screen. The photo album, that encrypted folder named Study Materials, 317 of them, exactly the same as my past life. I didn't break down, and I didn't cry. I took out my own phone, turned on the screen recording, and began photographing the photos in my brother's album. One by one, Jo Mehua snapped back to reality and snapped, "What are you doing? Give that to me, now." "Record evidence." I didn't even look up. "What evidence are you recording? This is your brother. Do you want to create chaos in the family?" Just then, the sound of slippers hitting the floor came from the stairs. Luke Hen appeared. At 13, he was already 172 meters tall. A growth spurt had hit him hard, leaving him a full size larger than any of his peers. He stood at the corner of the stairs, his bangs covering half his eyes. His gaze shifted from my mother's empty hands to the 2 phones in mine. His pupils contracted, but then, almost instinctively, the corners of his mouth turned up in a wounded, pitiful curve. "Sis, did you go through my phone?" In my past life, this expression softened my heart. In this life, I didn't even glance at him. 2. "Mom, tell Dad to come back." I calmly slipped my brother's phone into my pocket. Jo Mehua was flustered. "What exactly do you want? Your brother is just immature. Give the phone back to him, and I'll talk to him properly. Can we talk this out calmly?" For the first time, I lifted my head and looked my mother straight in the eye. "Mom, he took over 300 photos of me changing clothes. The earliest one was from 6 months ago. Do you really think talking it out calmly is enough?" Jo Mehua was speechless. Lu Chen's eyes immediately welled up with tears. I just think my sister is beautiful, and I wanted to keep it. I swear I haven't shown it to anyone else." What a line. I haven't shown it to anyone else. I smiled to myself. In my past life, I believed it. Then the whole school saw. "Fine." I looked up. "Since you say you haven't shown it to anyone else, you wouldn't mind letting the police confirm it, would you?" "The police? Zhou Meihua's voice became shrill. Lu Chen's face finally changed. It's not about feeling wronged. It's about turning a blind eye. Sis, you're calling the police. I'm your brother, precisely because you are my brother. I walked over to the coffee table in the living room and picked up the landline. You should know better. Some actions come with consequences. Put it down. Zhou Meihua lunged to grab the phone. I sidestepped, my fingers already dialing 110. You ungrateful wretch. Zhou Meihua pointed at me, shouting in disbelief. If your brother gets caught, his whole life will be ruined. Can you bear to see that? I held the phone to my ear, listening to the dial tone on the other end. Of course I can bear it, because I know, if I don't cut off Luchen's path today, it will be me who's destroyed in 3 months, and not just me. Hello, this is the 110 emergency service. Hello, I need to report a crime. My younger brother has been secretly taking photos and videos of me changing clothes for a long time. I have evidence. The address is room 702, building 3. Behi Garden, 176 Binhai Road. I spoke very clearly and calmly. The operator paused for a moment, and then their voice became serious. Okay, we'll send someone right over. Please secure the scene and preserve any evidence. After hanging up, the living room fell silent for 3 seconds. Then, Lu Ken began to cry. It wasn't the silent, resigned sorrow from a past life, sobbing loudly. He hid behind Zhou Meihua while crying, Mom, sister's gone crazy. She's trying to hurt me. Zhou Meihua tightly hugged her son and glared at me with fierce eyes. Just you wait. When Dad gets back, he'll break your legs. I pulled up a chair and sat down, placing both phones flat on the coffee table. Perfect timing, I said. Let Dad come home. Let's see who he dares to hit with the police right here. Just as the doorbell rang, Lu Jiangwo arrived. He rushed back after receiving a call from Zhou Meihua. Pushing the door open and seeing 2 uniformed police officers standing in the living room, his face fell. What's going on? I looked up at him. In my previous life, I only dared to appease him and fear him. In this life, my gaze is calm. Dad, Lu Ken took over 300 photos of me changing clothes. I've reported it to the police. Lu Jiangwo's face twitched. He first glanced at the 2 policemen, then at Lu Ken, who was huddled in the corner of the sofa, crying her heart out. Then he turned to me, lowering his voice. Don't air your dirty laundry in public. Do you understand? The 2 police officers exchanged a glance. One of the older police officers walked over to the tea table and picked up Luchen's phone. Sir, we need to investigate this matter according to the law. Your son is suspected of violating someone's privacy, regardless of whether he is a minor. What violation? That's his sister. We're a family. Does being a family give you the right to take sneaky photos? The young police officer's voice turned cold. He flipped open his phone's photo album, and within seconds, his brow furrowed tightly. Then he moved on to the next folder. Wait a moment. He looked up, his expression shifting. What's in this class? Photo album folder. It's not just your sister. He turned the screen toward me. I saw a blurry photograph. A girl in a school uniform bends over to pick something up in a classroom, viewed from a low angle. Next, another girl, and the next one, yet another. There were 47 in total. All of them were candid photos of different girls. My fingers felt stiff. In my past life, I had no idea about any of this. I only knew my photo had been posted. It turns out my younger brother was already a repeat offender. Before that, the older police officer closed his phone, and his gaze at Lu Jiangwo turned completely cold. Sir, the situation is more serious than we anticipated. Please come with us to the station to make a statement with your son. Luchen's crying stopped. He was so scared he forgot to cry. 3. The corridor of the police station was dimly lit with a cold, white light. I sat on a plastic chair, clutching a cup of hot water from a vending machine. The door to the interrogation room next door was tightly closed, but Luchen's frantic cries still reached me. I didn't mean to. I was just curious. I had no ill intentions. Curiosity can lead to taking over 300 stealth photos. I glanced down at my wrist, smooth, without any scars. The 3 deepest scars from my past life haven't appeared yet. If all goes well, they never will. Zhou Meihua emerged from the other room, her nose and eyes both red. She strode straight over to me and grabbed my wrist. Are you happy now? Your brother is in there shaking with fear. Can't you just tell the police you made a mistake? I pulled my hand back. Mom, There are 47 photos of other girls on his phone that he took without their permission. This isn't something I can just brush off as a misunderstanding anymore. Zhou Meihua's mouth opened and closed a few times, but no words came out. She wasn't unaware of what this meant, she just didn't want to admit it. An hour later, Officer Liu, who was in charge of the case, came to talk to me. Your brother's situation is currently quite complicated. He took off his glasses and rubbed his temples. The photos on his phone involve the privacy of multiple underage girls, but he himself is a minor, 13 years old, just below the age of criminal responsibility. I nodded. I know, in my past life, I studied relevant laws, checking them line by line, word by word, during those sleepless nights. Then I found that the law almost couldn't impose severe punishment on a 13-year-old child, but in this life, my goal was never to send my brother to prison. Officer Liu, I said, I only want 3 things. Go ahead. First, this incident must be documented and formalized into an official record. I need an official acknowledgement. Second, notify the 47 affected girls and their parents. They have the right to know they were filmed. Third, I paused for a moment. I want to apply for a restraining order. Officer Liu looked at me, stunned for a few seconds. He had dealt with many family cases, but had never seen a 15-year-old girl remain so composed in such a situation. A restraining order. You think your brother would hurt you? He absolutely would, I said. This wasn't a guess, it was a fact born of experience. In my past life, after I covered up for my brother, Liu Ken not only didn't stop, but became even more extreme. First, he picked the lock on my bedroom door. Then, he installed a pinhole camera in my bathroom. Finally, he sent all the photos to the school group chat. He threatened me, mocked me with those photos, treating me like a toy to humiliate it. Well, after being summoned by the school, he simply brushed it off with a casual remark. I just wanted them to see what my sister looks like. No sense of shame, shows no remorse, even with a perverse sense of satisfaction. This kind of person won't stop after just one warning. Officer Liu fell silent for a long time, then finally drew a heavy circle in his notebook. I'll do my best to help you through the process, but your parents, they won't agree. I finished his sentence for him. That's why I need the law. It was late at night when we left the police station. Lu Jiangwo drove with a dark expression, not uttering a single word the entire journey. Zhou Meihua silently wiped away tears in the passenger seat. Lu Chen, after being reprimanded and released, huddled in the far back, curling himself into a ball. I sat beside him near the car door, separated by a chilling silence. Lu Ken spoke up suddenly. Sis, her voice was soft, thick with emotion. Do you hate me? I turned to look at him. In the dimly lit carriage, the face of a 13-year-old boy was filled with fear and grievance. If it were my past life, I would have softened, would say it's okay, and that you're still young, you can change later. But as I look into those eyes now, I don't see my brother. I see a venomous snake that hasn't yet grown to its full size. If I don't break its fangs today, it will kill someone tomorrow. I don't hate you, I said calmly, turning my head to watch the streetlights flashing past the window, but I won't protect you anymore. After getting home, Lu Jiangwo called me into the study. As soon as the door closed, he raised his hand. Slap. I didn't dodge. My face was struck to the side, a trickle of blood seeping from the corner of my mouth, but I still stood straight. Done, I said. Do you even know what you did today? Lu Jiangwo clenched his teeth. What? If those girls' parents come knocking tomorrow, what about your brother's school record? Do you even care about this family anymore? I wiped the blood from the corner of my mouth with the back of my hand, leaving a stark red smear on my white sleeve. I left some of it on purpose. Dad, when you slapped me, did the security camera at home catch it? Lu Jiangwo's hand froze in midair. What surveillance? The one at the entrance of the living room. I pointed to the corner by the door. You installed it last year, said it was for security. Just before you called me into the study, as we passed the living room, that angle would have caught you pulling my arm. It's unclear if the study caught anything, but when you opened the door to leave, the injury on my face, I paused for a moment. It will definitely be captured. Lu Jiangwo's face turned from red to pale. I was secretly photographed by my younger brother, and then beaten by my father after I called the police. When I read this sentence aloud, my tone was as flat as if I were reciting a textbook. Dad, Do you think this news headline is better or worse than the photos my brother took of his classmates? A profound silence filled the study. Lu Jiangwo's raised hand slowly lowered. He looked at me and suddenly saw a stranger. What was I like before? Timid and cowardly. I wouldn't dare disobey a single order. But now, this, he couldn't bring himself to say it, yet he knew in his gut that after tonight, this family would never be the same again, for I didn't sleep in my own bedroom that night. I dragged a chair over and wedged it against the door, then turned the deadbolt 3 times. I was afraid Zhou Meihua would sneak in during the night to delete the evidence from my phone. This wasn't the first time she'd pulled something like this in her life. At 3 in the morning, the doorknob turned with a soft click. Just as expected, it turned twice, then stopped, finding itself locked. From the other end of the hallway came Zhou Meihua's muttered complaint, "That girl has really gone too far this time." I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wide awake. I was mentally sorting through the timeline of my past life, point by point. Today was the day to report it, the first day of the incident. In my past life, Lu Ken had lain low for a week after being reprimanded. On the 8th day, he started picking my door lock. On the 15th day, he installed a pinhole camera in my bathroom. The 37th day is one I will never forget for the rest of my life. The whole school group chat, my sister, free to watch. Then came endless online bullying, expulsion, a failed suicide attempt, and my parents' dismissive words, "You're the older sister, don't argue with him." I won't let this timeline repeat itself, but I know Lu Chen won't stop here. This younger brother wasn't just your typical, immature kid. In my previous life, while I was hospitalized, my attending physician suggested my parents take Lu Ken for a psychological evaluation. When the results came back, the doctor's expression turned grim. He used a term, empathy deficit. Lu Jiangwo tore up the report on the spot. "My son is not crazy. I never expected to change my brother's nature in this lifetime. There's only one thing I need to do to keep him out of my life, permanent." First thing the next morning, I did 3 things. I went to the hardware store and bought a brand new anti-pry deadbolt. I watched a tutorial and installed it myself, used the money from selling extracurricular tutoring materials the previous day to buy 2 high-definition mini cameras online, one facing the corridor outside the bedroom door, the other facing the bathroom entrance. Legally monitoring the public area in front of one's own home is not illegal. The third thing is the most important. I went to school, the dean's office at Bin Hai Middle School. Exactly 9 o'clock, I stood at the door in my school uniform, holding a file bag. "Director Shen, I have something very important to report." Director Shen glanced at me over his reading glasses. "What is it?" I placed the file folder on the table and opened it. Inside were copies of the police report receipts, case acceptance notices, and a handwritten statement I had prepared. My younger brother Lu Ken, a student in class 7-2, is suspected of secretly photographing multiple female classmates on campus. The police have filed a case. At least 12 of the victims involved are students from our school. Director Shen's reading glasses nearly fell off. "What?" "Here is the official document issued by the police station." I pushed the receipt in front of him. "The police are verifying the information about the victim, but I suggest the school notify the relevant students and parents as soon as possible to prevent the situation from escalating further." Director Shen held the receipt, his hands trembling. He had been a dean for 20 years, and had seen students fight, fall in love early, and skip classes, but a minor systematically taking upskirt photos of female students on campus. This was something he had never encountered in his entire career. Why didn't you say something sooner?" Those were the first words that instinctively tumbled out of his mouth. I wasn't angry, I simply said, "I only found out yesterday myself." But some people knew earlier and chose to stay silent. At noon, the school called the parents of the first group of girls who were secretly photographed. In the afternoon, my phone rang countless times. They were all from Zhou Meihua. I didn't answer. But after the 17th call, I got a text message. It was from Lu Jiangwo. It was only 4 words long. "You'll see." I saved a screenshot of the text message and then opened my phone's notes app. I created a new document titled, "Evidence List." The first entry was already written. Threatening text message after father's assault. Time, X month X day, 14:32. Screenshot backup taken. There are still over a dozen empty lines below. I know every line will be filled eventually. It's only a matter of time. 5. The parents' group chat exploded. Among the 47 secretly taken photos, 31 victims were confirmed by the police to be from Bin Hai Middle School. The oldest was 16 years old, the youngest was 11 years old, in 6th grade of elementary school, just promoted to junior high. The mother of a girl named Fang Qing cried and sent a 60-second voice message in the parent group. The gist is that her daughter has been having nightmares recently, refuses to wear skirts, and even dares not to attend PE class. She thought her child was just going through a rebellious phase, but today she found out what had happened after receiving a call from the school. Fang Qing is Lu Chen's classmate. 7 of the photos taken without her consent were of her. The parents' anger came swiftly and fiercely. That afternoon, 12 parents jointly submitted a complaint to the school, demanding severe punishment for Lu Ken and holding the school accountable for its oversight. By evening, the matter had made it to the local forum. The headline is striking, shocking news. 13-year-old boy at Bin Hai Middle School secretly photographed 31 female classmates. Did the school know and stay silent? The post has omitted all names, but those in the know can immediately tell who it's referring to. I sat in my bedroom, reading the comments under the forum post, expressionless. Why keep such a little brat around for the new year instead of sending them to a juvenile detention center? Where are the parents? How did they raise them? His sister was also a victim. That's so sad. I turned off my phone and drew the curtains. Pity, I don't need it. I've never needed anyone's pity in my past life. What I needed was for someone to stand by me and say, you did nothing wrong. No one has ever said a word in this life. I don't need anyone else to tell me. It's enough that I know it myself. The next morning, Zhou Meihua came to the school. She was here to have a word. From behind the window on the second-floor corridor, I caught sight of her figure. Zhou Meihua was wearing a somewhat worn floral-patterned jacket and carrying a plastic bag with a few packs of cigarettes and several bottles of tea inside. She stood outside the dean's office for 10 full minutes before finally knocking. Once inside, the door remained shut for a long time. I could guess what she was saying. Our child just doesn't know any better. Could we please not report this? We're willing to compensate. Can we settle this privately? 45 minutes later, Zhou Meihua emerged from the dean's office. He came out looking even more grim than when he went in, because Director Shen is no longer making decisions. The Education Bureau has stepped in. 31 victims, a trending post on the local forum, and a joint complaint from parents. No head teacher could possibly contain a situation like this. Zhou Meihua passed by my classroom as she was leaving. She stood outside the window for a few seconds. We stared at each other through the glass. In Zhou Meihua's eyes, there was no tenderness, only resentment, as if I'm the one who caused all of this. It was Lu Ken who took the photos secretly. Lu Ken is the one who made the mistake, but in Zhou Meihua's eyes, I'm the one who destroyed this family. I looked away first. I just couldn't bear to look anymore. When school let out in the afternoon, I didn't go home. I went to a print shop near the school and spent 15 yuan. I printed out a copy of the Law on the Protection of Minors and a copy of the Guide to Applying for a Personal Safety Protection Order. Then, I went to the Community Legal Aid Center. The lawyer on duty was a young woman named Song Qing. After reviewing the documents I brought, she adjusted her glasses, and her expression turned serious. Your brother's actions have violated Article 42 of the Public Security Administration Punishment Law, keeping at or secretly photographing others' privacy, although, because he is under 14 years old, administrative detention will not be carried out. However, the local police station can reprimand him and order his parents to discipline him. But what if the parents refuse to discipline him? I asked. Song Qing glanced at me. If you have evidence that your personal safety is under threat, the court can issue a protection order, and if your guardian is unfit to continue their duties, she paused for a moment, you can apply for a change of custody. Change of custody. These 4 words were like a ray of light, illuminating a world I thought would remain forever dark. Lawyer Song, my voice was soft, but each word was clear. Help me with this lawsuit. I need to get out of this house. 6. I didn't go home right away. I was waiting. In my previous life, Lu Chen started picking my lock on the 8th day, with police records, school notices, and public pressure. This time, he will act sooner. My judgment was correct. Day 5, when I got home from school, I noticed the shoes by the door had been moved. My sneakers had been kicked into a corner, the laces tied in a tight, impossible knot, a childish yet malicious act of retaliation. I walked upstairs with a blank expression. Passing Lu Chen's room, the door was shut tight. but a faint light seeped out from the crack beneath it. I walked straight to the door of my own room. The door was locked, and the anti-pry lock was intact, but around the keyhole, there were several fresh scratches in the metal. I crouched down for a closer look. Those were pry marks from a screwdriver. He tried to pick the lock, but failed. A faint smile touched the corner of my mouth. I pulled out my phone and pulled up the playback from the hidden camera outside my door. For 17 p.m., on the screen, Luke Hen was standing furtively at my door, holding a flathead screwdriver. He stuck the screwdriver into the lock, gave it a few twists, but it didn't open. He then crouched down and peered through the keyhole for a few seconds. He stood up, kicked the door, and muttered a curse. He then turned and went back to his own room. The whole thing took 1 minute and 42 seconds. The recording is very clear. I exported the video and sent it to lawyer Song Ching. After reviewing it, Song Ching replied with a message: "The materials for the protection order are almost complete. Come to sign tomorrow." I locked the door and sat down at my desk. I felt no fear. There was only a cold sense of satisfaction. In my past life, I was the prey. The hunter's trap for this life has already been set, but Luchen's reaction was even faster than I had anticipated. At 11:30 that night, I was jolted awake by a violent pounding on the door. It wasn't a knock, it's a smash. "Luji, open the door for me." It was Luchen's voice, rough and wild with teenage angst. "Did you say something at school? The whole class is laughing at me. Do you know what they call me? They call me a pervert." The sound of the door being smashed is getting louder. "What right do you have? What right do you have to ruin me?" The doorframe is shaking, and the burglar lock is making clanking sounds of metal colliding. Lu Jiangwo's voice came from downstairs. "Chen Chen, stop messing around." Then Zhou Meihua's voice: "It's all your sister's fault. Your sister's fault." I sat on the bed, leaning against the wall. I didn't open the door, not even a sound. I just held up my phone, pointed it towards the door, and pressed the record button. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, bang. The doorframe shuddered from the kick, and a crack split the wooden panel, but the lock held firm. In the end, it was Lu Jiangwo who came up to drag Lu Chen away. "That's enough. Do you want the neighbors to call the police?" The sound of footsteps faded away. Lu Chen's wailing and Zhou Meihua's comforting voice could be heard downstairs. I stopped the recording and checked the duration, 3 minutes and 47 seconds. That should be enough. I backed up the video in 3 places, locally on my phone, on a cloud drive, and to attorney Song Ching's work email. Then I lay back in bed and closed my eyes. In my previous life, in the quiet of the night, I was overwhelmed by fear, counting the scars on my wrists over and over again. In this life, in the quiet of the night, I counted each crime committed by Luke Hen. After dawn, I packed my luggage, not much, a backpack and a suitcase, a few changes of clothes, textbooks, ID card, and those 2 cameras. I left at 7. Without looking back, as I walked downstairs, I ran into Aunt Zhang from next door. "Xiao Ji, going to school so early, hum." I smiled, then I walked straight past the school intersection, heading in another direction. I went to my grandmother's house. My grandmother, Chen Yueying, lives alone in an old neighborhood in the south of the city. Her apartment has 3 bedrooms and a living room, with 1 spare guest room. When she saw me standing at the door with my suitcase, she was taken aback for a moment. Without asking any questions, she simply opened the door. "Come on in, I just finished making breakfast." I stepped inside, set down my luggage, and caught the scent of plain rice porridge and pickled vegetables. My nose suddenly stung a little. I held it back. "Grandma, I might need to stay here for a while." Chen Yueying placed a bowl of congee in front of me. "Stay as long as you like," the old woman said, her tone flat, but as she walked to the window, she turned her back and discreetly wiped the corner of her eye. 7. Zhou Meihua found out I'd moved out through a furious, roaring phone call from Lu Jiangwo. "Your daughter has moved in with your mother. Tell her to come back home this instant." What kind of family lets a minor child live on their own? What will people think of us? Zhou Meihua called me 7 times. I didn't pick up once. The 8th call was to Chen Yueying. "Mom, don't indulge her. She's getting more and more out of line. She's turning the whole house upside down." "Meihua," Chen Yueying's voice was quiet. "Are you sure it was her doing?" The call ended after staying at my grandmother's house. I went to school and returned home as usual every day, but there was one more item on my schedule. Every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, I went to the Community Legal Aid Center to work with lawyer Song Ching on the progress. Apply for a personal safety protection order. Apply for a change of custody. The protection order was issued quickly. My evidence chain is complete. Evidence records from the phone with sneak photos. Police report, lockpicking video, door smashing footage, and threatening messages from Lu Jiangwo, and the fact that my mother never intervened throughout the entire process. The court issued a protection order. Lu Chen is prohibited from approaching within 50 meters of me. Song Qing sighed while organizing the materials, saying, I've been doing legal aid for 2 years, and you are the most thoroughly prepared client I've ever seen. How did you come up with the idea of installing a camera? I smiled. Because I knew he would come. The case for changing custody, however, is far more complex. Legally, to change the custody of a minor, one must prove that the original guardian has severely harmed the physical or mental health of the ward or failed to perform their guardianship duties. I have a lot of evidence I can provide, but I'm still missing the most crucial piece: need to prove that my parents were not just improperly educated, but knowingly condoned and even shielded their son's abuse of me. This piece I could never produce in my previous life, because everything from my previous life was suppressed, photos were deleted, no police were called, and the matter was digested as a family affair within the 4 walls. But this life is different. The police station's interrogation transcript clearly recorded the exact words of Lu Jiangwo and Zhou Meihua. He's only 13. He doesn't know any better. It's a family matter. Why call the police? If you dare touch my son, I'll make you regret it. Every word, written in black and white. After the protection order was issued, I discovered something interesting. Lu Chen's days at school have also become difficult. It wasn't because of any disciplinary action. The Education Bureau's investigation is still ongoing. It was because of the court of public opinion among the students. Binhai High School isn't very big, so news travels fast, especially after the girls who were secretly photographed confirmed the photos' existence. Almost no girl in the entire school was willing to speak to Lu Ken. The boys also started to ostracize him, not out of a sense of justice. They felt ashamed to be seen with him. Don't get close to that pervert. This sentence became Lu Chen's new label. He started skipping classes, then he began taking out his frustrations at home. Zhou Meihua called me to cry on the phone. Your brother is breaking things at home every day, even smashing your dad's coffee table yesterday. Can you come back and talk to him? I only said, Mom, if it's his problem, call the police. Don't call me, you heartless thing. Zhou Meihua cursed and then hung up. I put down my phone and picked up the textbook on the desk. Heartless, I wish I had a conscience. In my past life, I gave all my conscience to this family, and all I got in return were 3 scars and a life. On Tuesday afternoon, Song Qing called. Luji, I found something out. Your brother was taken by your father for a genetic test before, but the report was never given to the police. My hand froze. What genetic test? Your father took him for it 6 months ago. He said the kid had too much of a temper and wanted to see if there was a genetic factor. Now I remember, in my past life, I vaguely remember my parents mentioning the term supermale once. XYY syndrome, a sex chromosome abnormality, with the popular belief being that carriers are more prone to impulsiveness and aggression. Although medical conclusions do not fully support this claim, in the general public's perception, it has almost become synonymous with born evil. What are the results of the report? I asked. I haven't received it yet, but from what I understand, after your father got the results, he never had your brother undergo any further checks or psychological interventions. I closed my eyes. I understand that phrase from my past life. He's only 13. He doesn't know any better. It wasn't that the father genuinely believed his son was merely immature. Rather, he had long known something was wrong with his son, but chose to conceal it and let it slide, because admitting his son had a problem meant admitting there was something wrong with his own genes. Lu Jiangwo's pride wouldn't allow it, so he kept everything hidden, even if it meant sacrificing my safety and life. Lawyer Song, my voice was steady, help me retrieve that genetic test report. This is crucial evidence for changing custody. They are not unaware of the risks to the child. They are aware but deliberately choosing to do nothing. Song Qing was silent on the other end of the phone for a few seconds. Luji, are you sure you want to take this step? Once the custody change case is filed, your relationship with your parents, it's over, I said. The tone was calm, as if stating a fact that had long been confirmed. It ended the day they chose to protect him instead of me. 8. Changing custody cases take time, but Luke Hen surprised me with an unexpected gift. On Thursday afternoon, I went to the legal aid center as usual after school. Halfway there, I received an anonymous text message on my phone. Lu Ji, do you think you've won? Delete what you posted, or I'll make sure the whole school sees your body. No signature, but I recognize the last digits of the number. It's Lu Chen's spare SIM card, which he got last month. I stood on the sidewalk, staring at the message, my heart beating steady and strong. Otherwise, I'll let the whole school see your body. In his previous life, he made it happen. In this life, he wants to repeat the same trick, but the photos in his possession had already been seized by the police, who demanded they be deleted. How did he manage to keep backups? The answer is simple: cloud storage. In my past life, I didn't understand these technical issues. I thought deleting something from my phone would make it clean, but in this life, the first thing I did after being reborn was to check my brother's phone. Those photos were indeed deleted from the phone's album. However, an auto-syncing cloud drive account is logged into the phone. All those photos are backed up in the cloud. Deleting the phone is pointless. I don't know about my past life. I've known about this life for a long time, but I didn't rush to tell the police. I was waiting for Luke Hen to reveal himself. Output only translation, matching, content_type, format. Now, he has stepped forward. I sent the screenshot of the text message to Song Qing and also forwarded it to Officer Lu, the person in charge of the case. Then I sent a message back to Luke Hen, just one word: okay. The sunset painted the streets in shades of orange. I stood under the streetlight, gently tapping on the screen with my fingers. I logged into an anonymous forum, created a new account, and made a post. Title: A girl who was secretly filmed by her own brother wants to ask everyone, what did I do wrong? The post contained no real names, school names, or any identifiable information. I only wrote about my own experience. The younger brother secretly took photos. The parents covered it up. I was beaten after reporting to the police. I was threatened after moving out, and now, my brother is threatening to release the photos again. I asked a question: if I stay silent, the photos will eventually be released, and my life will be ruined. If I resist, everyone says I'm heartless and immature. What on earth should I do? After posting, I locked my phone and continued on my way to the legal aid center. I didn't keep staring at the forum for replies, but 2 hours later, Song Qing turned his laptop toward me in the office. The post went viral, topped the homepage, #1 in popularity, with over 3,000 comments. Heaven, what kind of family is this? The parents are truly so biased towards boys that they're out of their minds, right? Reported to the police and still got beaten. This dad is practically an accomplice. Oki, you must protect yourself. Whatever you do, don't back down. Is there a lawyer here? Can you sue your parents in a situation like this? I'm in Bin Hai. If you need help, you can contact me. I'm a journalist. I read that last comment a couple more times. Journalists, in my past life. There were no journalists in my past life. I didn't even know you could seek help anonymously. I thought the whole world was on my brother's side. Because he's your brother, you're the older sister, and family scandals shouldn't be aired in public. But in this life, someone heard, Attorney Song. I pointed at the journalist's comment. Help me get in touch with this person. Song Qing nodded. But remember one thing, you're a minor, no report can reveal your identity. I know. I nodded. I don't need them to know who I am. I just need them to know this exists. 3 days later, the largest metropolitan newspaper in the city published an in-depth report in the social section. She called the police, but home failed to protect her. The self-rescue journey of a minor girl. The report used pseudonyms and omitted the school and address. However, the article presented one fact in exhaustive detail. A 13-year-old boy had been secretly filming his sister over a long period. His parents chose to cover it up, forcing the sister to leave home for her own safety. With legal aid, she is now seeking a change of custody. After the report was published, the city's Women's Federation, Education Bureau, and Youth Rights Protection Center were all spurred into action. My phone rang again, but this time, it wasn't Zhou Meihua calling, it was the Education Bureau. Student Luji, we'd like to understand your situation a little better. It's the Women's Federation. Don't worry, child, we will step in. It's the Youth Protection Center. We can offer you temporary shelter and counseling. I answered each call politely and restrained. noting down every number in my memo. I didn't cry, I used up all my tears in my previous life. In this life, I only want to win. 9. After things escalated, Lu Jiangwo could no longer stay calm. He got a diagnosis certificate. The diagnosis stated XYY chromosome abnormal syndrome, issued by a private clinic in the south of the city. He held the diagnosis and sent a long message in the parent group. Dear fellow parents, my son's behavior has indeed caused trouble for everyone, and I apologize on behalf of my entire family, but the reason the child behaves this way is due to a congenital chromosomal disorder, and he cannot control himself. We are already actively seeking treatment, and I kindly ask everyone to give him a chance to improve. As soon as the news broke, public opinion subtly split. Some continued to criticize. If you're sick, you should be kept under control. Is being sick a reason to let someone cause harm? Others began to hesitate. If it's congenital, that's quite pitiful. Should the child be given a chance? After all, they're only 13. I was doing my homework at my grandmother's desk when I saw this message. I put down my pen, picked up my phone, and read it carefully 3 times. Then I smiled. I knew in my past life that my father would pull this trick. This is the only trick this man knows. Blame the issue on uncontrollable factors, making himself and his son both victims. He's not really explaining for his son, he's passing the buck. Blame it on the genes, blame it on fate. As long as the bad behavior wasn't something he taught, then he bears no responsibility. But Lu Jiangwo made a fatal mistake. He was unaware that attorney Song Qing was already in the process of obtaining his genuine genetic test report from 6 months prior. 3 days later, Song Qing got hold of the report. She opened the file, read it twice, then took off her glasses and rubbed her temples. Luji, come and take a look at this. I walked over. The conclusion section of the report states, subject's chromosomal karyotype, 46, XY, no XYY abnormality detected. In other words, completely normal. Lu Qin doesn't have any super male syndrome. His chromosomes are identical to those of the vast majority of normal males. That diagnosis certificate from the private clinic is fake. Lu Jiangwo spent money to find an unlicensed clinic, got a fake diagnosis, and then showed it to the world. Look, my son is like this because of a genetic issue. It's not that we didn't teach him well, it's not that he's inherently bad. I held the 2 reports, one real and one fake, gently stroking the paper with my fingers. Lawyer Song, my voice was soft. Submit these 2 reports together to the court as the core evidence for the guardianship change case. Song Qing nodded. Also, I added, can we hold that private clinic accountable for issuing a false medical certificate? Yes, falsifying medical documents is grounds for license revocation. If it was issued under instruction, your father could also face legal risks. I placed the report back into the file folder and zipped it shut. Let's sue together. My tone was as casual as saying, let's have dinner together. But Song Qing noticed a slight tremor in my fingers as I set down the file bag. It was anger, a rage that had been suppressed for too long. Finally finding an outlet, Luji, Song Qing called out to me, huh, do you hate them? I paused for 2 seconds at the door. I said, I hated so much in my past life that I wanted to die. I said, I don't hate anymore. All I want now is to win. 10. The court has formally accepted the petition for a change of custody. The court date is set for 3 weeks from now. During this time, things took another turn. Lu Ken was gone, not missing, but playing hooky. He hasn't gone to school for 5 consecutive days. His phone is off, and his room is locked from the inside. Zhou Meihua has argued with Lu Jiangwo over the phone countless times. You need to control your son. What if something really happens to him? How am I supposed to control him? It's all that girl's fault. On the 6th day, Lu Chen's homeroom teacher reported the incident to the police. This was because they received an anonymous link sent to the parent group. Clicking the link led to a cloud drive share. Inside were 23 sneak photos, not the ones from before. They are newly taken, all from a convenience store near the school. The victims are 3 unfamiliar girls in school uniforms, not from Binhai Middle School, but from the adjacent Yutsai Middle School. Lu Ken didn't stop there. He simply changed his hunting ground. After I got the news, I sat on the sofa at my grandmother's house in silence for a long time. Chen Yueying walked over with a plate of sliced apples. Seeing my expression, she set the plate down and sat beside me. What's wrong, Grandma? My voice was hoarse. He did it again. Chen Yueying said nothing, she simply reached out and gently covered the back of my hand. Those hands were wrinkled and calloused, but they were warm. I curled up on the sofa, hiding my face behind my knees. I didn't cry, but my shoulders twitched, just once. Then I looked up, grabbed my phone, and dialed Officer Lu's number. Officer Lu, I need to update you on my brother's case. This time, Lu Ken was released without being reprimanded. His actions constitute a pattern of systematic harm against multiple victims on repeated occasions, although he cannot be held criminally liable as he is under the age of 14. However, according to the newly revised Law on the Prevention of Juvenile Delinquency, his behavior meets the threshold for serious misconduct. The public security authorities have submitted recommendations to the Education Administrative Department. Lu Chen was placed in a specialized correctional education school for a year of closed management. This proposal requires approval through statutory procedures. Lu Jiangwo flew into a rage. He hired a lawyer to prepare a defense for his son, but the lawyer he found refused to take the case after reviewing the case materials in person. Mr. Lu, I advise you. Your son's situation is beyond what a lawyer can resolve. 31 plus 3 equals 34 victims, the youngest being 11 years old. What you should do now is cooperate with the investigation, not resist it. Lu Jiangwo cursed out the lawyer and stormed out, slamming the door behind him, but deep down, he knew it was almost a foregone conclusion that his son would be sent to the reform school. He blamed me for everything. That night, Lu Jiangwo drank half a caddy of baijiu, driving drunk to the downstairs. He didn't go upstairs, but he stood downstairs for a full 2 hours. Then he did something. He took out his phone and dialed my number. I picked up. Dad, Luji. On the other end of the line, Lu Jiangwo's voice was slurred and indistinct. Dad is begging you, don't let your brother go in there. If he goes in, he's truly finished. I'll kowtow to you. I heard the sound of someone dropping to their knees. Then came the sound of a forehead striking the ground. Thud, thud, thud. Under the streetlight below, a man in his 40s knelt on the cold concrete, kowtowing toward my window. I stood behind the curtain. I could see my father's back, bent over, his shoulders heaving. In my previous life, I had never seen my father like this. In my past life, when I was cyberbullied into dropping out of school, what was my father doing? Watching TV in the living room. And the first time I cut my wrist, smoking on the balcony. A second time, playing mahjong. The third time, and the last, I don't know, because that time, I never woke up. And now, he was on his knees, not for me. He knelt to keep his son out of reform school. The kindest thing this man has ever done for me, across 2 lifetimes, was still for someone else. I drew the curtains. Dad, I can't help you. The sound of kowtowing from the other end of the phone ceased. Take legal matters to the law. I hung up the phone. 11. It was raining on the day of the hearing. The courtroom was small. In the public gallery sat staff from the Women's Federation and representatives from the Youth Rights Protection Center. There were also 2 journalists from media outlets Song Qing had contacted in advance. I sat in the plaintiff's seat, wearing my school uniform with my hair tied in a ponytail. At 15, I appeared more mature than my actual age. Opposite me were Lu Jiangwo and Zhou Meihua. The two clearly hadn't slept well. Zhou Meihua's eyes were swollen, Lu Jiangwo's shirt was wrinkled, and there was a suspicious yellow stain at the collar. They hired a lawyer, a middle-aged man from the neighborhood who usually handled debt disputes and took on the case at the last minute. The judge called the court to order. Song Qing was the first to present the facts and grounds for applying to change the guardianship. The respondents, Lu Jiangwo and Zhou Meihua, were fully aware that their son, Lu Chen, had been secretly taking private photos of Lu Ji over an extended period. Yet, not only did he fail to intervene, but he also engaged in a series of actions including destroying evidence, preventing the filing of a police report, and physically assaulting the person under his guardianship. After Lu Ji called the police for help, Lu Jiangwo subjected her to physical violence and verbal threats, forcing her to leave her home. Furthermore, Lu Jiangwo fabricated a medical diagnosis, attributing Lu Chen's behavior to a congenital genetic abnormality. In an attempt to shirk his guardianship responsibilities, our investigation, which involved obtaining the original genetic test report, confirmed that the diagnosis was entirely fabricated. Song Qing handed the judge photocopies of 2 reports. The judge took them and compared them. The opposing lawyer's expression visibly darkened. Apparently, Lu Jiangwo hadn't told him about the forged diagnosis. Zhou Meihua began to quietly sob in the gallery. Lu Jiangwo clenched his teeth, his fists so tight that his knuckles turned white. Song Qing continued, during this period when the respondent neglected their guardianship duties, Lu Chen's voyeuristic behavior not only did not stop but also expanded to students from other schools, increasing the number of victims from 31 to 34. This further demonstrates that the respondent has no ability to control Lu Ken and poses an ongoing threat to my personal safety. Therefore, the applicant, Lu Ji, requests the court to transfer guardianship to her maternal grandmother, Chen Yueying. Chen Yueying has independent housing, a stable retirement income, and has already been providing for Lu Ji's daily care. The judge looked across the room. The respondent sighed. Please present your arguments. The opposing lawyer stood up and cleared his throat. We believe that the applicant has exaggerated the family conflict. Although Lu Jiangwo and Zhou Meihua made some mistakes in their approach, their intention was to preserve family unity. Objection. Song Qing stood up. Preserving the family unit is not a justification for sacrificing one child to protect another. This isn't protecting a family. This is selective abandonment. The courtroom fell into a brief silence. The judge struck the gavel. The objection is sustained. The respondent's side may proceed. The opposing lawyer wiped his brow. He tried to approach it from another angle. Is it truly in Lu Ji's best interest to be under the guardianship of a 73-year-old, given that she is only 15? Song Qing stood up without waiting to be called upon by the judge. Compared to a grandmother who is willing to protect her, what she received in her original family was voyeurism, cover-up, beatings, and threats. Your Honor, which do you think is more in her best interest? In the courtroom, Lu Jiangwo finally lost his composure. He suddenly stood up, pointing at me and shouting, "You think you're all grown up now, don't you? I raised you for 15 years, and this is how you repay me? I swear." Order in the court. The judge cut in sharply. Respondent, maintain proper courtroom decorum. If you have another emotional outburst, this court will hold you in contempt. Lu Jiangwo was pulled back into his seat by his lawyer, but everyone had heard the words he left unspoken. You want to bet? Bet on what? That he'll break my legs, or slap me across the face. I sat in the plaintiff's seat, facing my father's fury. I didn't even blink, because I've seen something even more terrifying. What's scarier than my father's slap is the title in the school group chat. My sister, free to watch. More terrifying than the shouting was lying in bed after cutting my wrists, hearing my parents' footsteps pass by outside the door, and no one ever coming in to check on me. That was the real pain. What happened today is nothing. The hearing lasted for over 2 hours. Finally, the judge announced that the verdict would be delivered at a later date. As we left the courthouse, it was still raining. Song Qing came over with an umbrella. How are you feeling? Nervous. I'm not nervous, I said, watching the rainwater trickle down the steps. We've done all we can. The rest is up to the law. Song Qing gave a faint smile. Are you really only 15? I didn't answer. I just held up that transparent umbrella with the convenience store logo, and step by step, descended the stairs into the rain. Behind me, Lu Jiangwo and Zhou Meihua were still standing at the entrance to the courthouse lobby. The two of them looked as if all the strength had been drained from their bodies. Zhou Meihua suddenly took 2 steps forward. Gigi, she called me by my pet name. She hadn't called me or even looked at me before the trial began, but now, Gigi, Mom knows she was wrong. Don't leave. Mom will take you home. Okay. My steps faltered for a moment. The sound of rain was heavy, but that, Gigi, pierced through all the rain, drilling into my ears. The apology I waited 15 years for in my previous life, it came today, but it's too late. That's so fake. If you were truly sorry, why wait until you're in a courtroom? If you really loved me, why was your first call to your husband, not to me? I didn't look back. I keep walking. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. The rain grew heavier and heavier. My figure gradually faded from view beneath the plane trees outside the courthouse. Behind me, Zhou Meihua's sobs were swallowed by the rain. 12. The day the verdict was handed down, autumn had already arrived. I read the entire verdict in my grandmother's living room, word by word. Not a single detail was missed. Chen Yueying was simmering a pot of pork rib soup in the kitchen, its rich aroma wafting into the living room. Grandma, we won. Chen Yueying poked her head out from the kitchen, glanced at me, and smiled briefly. Just a moment, then she turned back to continue stewing the soup. Nothing in the world seemed more important than that pot of spare rib soup. I smiled too. I folded the verdict neatly and placed it in the desk drawer, along with those photo evidence, together with the protective order, together with 2 genetic test reports. What's in this drawer is the heaviest thing in my 2 lifetimes. It's also the sharpest weapon in my life. That same week, Luke Hen was formally admitted to the city's specialized correctional education school for juveniles. The program was set to last for 12 months. It operated under a closed management system. Cell phones, cameras, or any electronic devices were strictly prohibited. Lu Jiangwo and Zhou Meihua wept in each other's arms at the school gate on the day they saw him off. Lu Chen, on the other hand, remained calm. He glanced back before walking through the gate, not to look at his parents. He glanced in a certain direction. I wasn't there, but that direction was towards my home. His lips moved, no sound came out, but later, the staff who saw him off told lawyer Song Qing that he had said, "It's not over." When Song Qing told me about this, I was organizing the new textbooks the school had issued. I switched to a new school. It's close to my grandma's house. The teachers are just okay, but nobody knows me there. That's all I need. Is he still going on? I asked without looking up from my English textbook. Yeah. Song Qing's tone carried a hint of concern. Then let him take his time. I wrote my name on the flyleaf of the textbook. Each stroke was deliberate and neat. By the time he gets out, I'll be 16. I'll be better able to protect myself than I am now. Song Qing looked at me and suddenly felt the autumn sun outside the window was exceptionally bright. 13. 1 year later, I turned 16. I got into the advanced class of the city's top high school, ranking 7th in my entire school. No one knows about my past. No one calls me that girl. I'm just an ordinary girl, quiet, a good student, who occasionally helps my deskmate with math problems between classes. After school, I volunteer at the Community Legal Aid Center. There are always endless cases at lawyer Song Qing's office, wives suffering domestic abuse, students bullied at school, and girls threatened by their ex-boyfriends. I help by organizing case files, printing documents, and running errands to deliver materials. Sometimes, when the clients are overwhelmed with emotions and lawyer Song Qing is too busy, I offer them a glass of water, sit across from them, and quietly stay by their side. No preaching. Don't say, "Everything will be okay." Just say, "Did you secure the evidence? Did you call the police? Need help finding a lawyer?" Simple, practical, cold, but effective, just like I did to myself back then. Lu Chen was released after completing 12 months in a special school. I didn't keep tabs on him, but the news still reached me. When Lu Jiangwo went to pick up his son, he waited at the school gate for 3 hours. When Lu Chen came out, he had grown quite a bit taller, his face expressionless. After he got in the car, Lu Jiangwo handed him a bag. Inside was a new phone. Lu Jiangwo said, "It's good to be out. Go home and live well. I bought you a new phone. You won't be short of anything else." Chen Yueying first heard about this from a neighbor while she was out buying groceries. After returning home, she stood in the kitchen in silence for a long time. During dinner, she served me a piece of braised pork belly. "Gigi, your grandmother has just one thing she wants to say to you." I put down my chopsticks and looked at my grandmother earnestly. Chen Yueying's face showed no trace of emotion. She said, "Whatever your father does, that's his business. You live your own life." There was a pause. "Don't look back." I gave a slight nod. "I won't look back, Grandma." What happened next wasn't a long story. 3 months after Luke Hen was released, he was caught red-handed taking inappropriate photos of a stranger in an internet cafe, and the police were called. This time, he has turned 14, administrative detention for 7 days. After the news spread, the last shred of dignity for Lu Jiangwo and Zhou Meihua was shattered. Neighbors in the community would avoid them. Their colleagues were talking behind their backs. In the family group chat, their names were forever linked to that kid who took the creep shots. No one felt sorry for them, because everyone knew they had countless opportunities to stop this. They chose the worst path. And me, during the winter break of my sophomore year, I helped Song Qing compile a legal proposal on domestic abuse of minors. The report was submitted to People's Congress representative of the city. In the spring of the following year, our city pioneered the Family Safety School pilot project across the province. Schools are required to report proactively when they discover abuse within a minor's family, rather than waiting for the victim to come forward. The project's brochure features an anonymous quote on the front page. Protecting one child should not come at the expense of another. No signature, but Song Ching knew who wrote it. The last semester of senior year evening, after school, I passed by that coastal road I used to walk every day. The streetlights came on, and the shadows of the plane trees fell upon the sidewalk. Dappled and serene, my wrist remained smooth and unmarked, no scars. Not a single one, those 3 marks from another time, forever gone. The phone buzzed once. It was a message from Song Ching. Luji, you'll be taking the college entrance exam next year. Have you thought about what you want to study? I thought for a few seconds and replied with 2 words, law. After sending it, I stood under the streetlight, gazing up at the starry sky overhead. There weren't many stars, but they shone brightly, in a past life. That version of me, on a certain late night at 15. Closed her eyes in the bathtub. Was it the starry sky she saw in that moment? Too, still nothing, I don't know, but I do, in this life. I lived for her, live with clarity, sharpness, and precision, live in a way that leaves no room for those who wish to harm me, no escape. I put away my phone, slung my backpack over my shoulder, and walked towards home. Grandma's spare rib soup should be done by now. The evening breeze carries a faint scent of osmanthus flowers. My steps are light, but my footprints are deep. The end. Story 2. After the fire, no one wanted to rescue an orc whose fate was unknown, yet I happily brought him home with delight, until I heard him say, if she hadn't adopted me while I was unconscious, Mona would have been my rightful master. Staying by her side was worse than death itself. That's when I realized. He had always loved my sister. Fine, I'll let you have your way, later. I dissolved our contract and took a lionfolk who truly loved me as my mate. His eyes reddened as he choked out, are you leaving me? Take this money. I forced the bank card into Hale's hand and reached for his ear, but he recoiled with clear aversion. My hand froze midair before settling to ruffle his hair instead. It's your birthday today. Go have fun with your friends. He turned and walked into the private room without so much as glancing at me. I'd long grown accustomed to his aloofness. Werewolves, naturally cold and distant when it comes to emotions, I didn't realize until I reached the restaurant entrance that he still had my house keys. When I went back to retrieve them, I happened to overhear his conversation with a friend. Sometimes I wish Scarlett had never saved me. Maybe then Mona would have been the one to adopt me. Hale's despondent voice drifted from the private box. Staying by her side is worse than death itself. His friend gave him a sympathetic pat on the shoulder and murmured in agreement, honestly, I can't even bring myself to look at Scarlett's face properly. It's downright terrifying. I pressed a hand against my aching heart, as if it were being crushed by an invisible fist. I stumbled out of the restaurant like a walking corpse. The revolving door's glass reflected my image. My entire left face was covered with hideous pink scars, paired with my numb expression. I looked like some monster crawled straight out of hell. A decade ago, a massive fire broke out at the orc auction house. Hale, who was being auctioned at the time, was knocked unconscious by a falling beam. I stubbornly went back to save him and ended up burning the left side of my face, leaving it permanently scarred. If this wolf has no immediate family, an adoptive guardian must sign for him, otherwise, the surgery can't proceed. The doctor held the surgical consent form, asking if anyone would step forward as his guardian, but not a single person in the room spoke up. After all, who'd want to adopt a wolf that might be dead or alive? Me, I'll sign it. Ignoring my disfigured face, I pressed the gauze-wrapped wound and signed the adoption papers. Only later did I learn he'd had his eye on Mona, my half-sister, all along. Were it not for this fire, she would have been his mistress. Lacking the courage to push the door open for the keys, I sat listlessly on the doorstep till midnight. Hale stumbled home drunk, silently produced his keys upon seeing me huddled on the ground, and unlocked the door without a word. Not once did he ask if I was cold or hungry. I used to think he was just born emotionally reserved, like all werewolves. Now I realize he simply didn't care enough to show it. Watching his fluffy tail droop behind him, it suddenly clicked. No wonder it always perked up and wagged whenever Mona appeared. So that's how he acts when he's truly smitten. I reached out to touch him, but he recoiled with wary eyes. What do you want? His voice dripped with irritation. I stared at him. Hale, can we sleep together tonight? Ever since we moved in, he's been sleeping in a separate room, but masters are allowed to request their beast men to share a bed, aren't they? Once again, I clearly saw the rejection and disgust in his eyes. I don't like sharing a bed with others, Am I? Others, I pressed on stubbornly. He looked straight at me. If you don't like this one, you could always adopt a different beast folk. With that, they walked straight into the master bedroom without another word. When we first moved in, I knew how much they loved floor-to-ceiling windows, so I gave them the master bedroom with the row of panoramic windows, settling for the smaller guest room myself. Click, the living room fell silent again with the sound of the locking door. I let out a bitter laugh, collapsing onto the couch as tears streamed down my face. Being allowed to adopt another beast folk means our own adoption contract can be terminated. After all, each person can only adopt one beast folk. He'd said those exact words before. It was Spring City's once every 5 years grand festival, where all adults would make their first public appearance with their beast folk companions. Knowing how he disliked crowds and being the center of attention, I spent a whole week groveling before Hale before finally convincing him to attend with me. I was so eager to show my family how tall and handsome the beast man I'd recklessly adopted had grown, but when Hale saw Mona arriving with her own beast man in tow, as they whispered intimately, his face turned ashen. He wrenched his hand from mine and stormed out before everyone. There I stood on the podium, beaming with pride as I introduced him to my clan. Stunned by the sudden turn of events, I stood helpless under the spotlight, facing a sea of gazes, some pitying, others mocking and scornful. Since he came into my life, I'd never felt ashamed of my ugliness, but that day, I felt completely exposed, as if stripped naked in public, drowning in overwhelming shame. Too ugly freak, even your beast man finds you repulsive. Honestly, staring at that face all day, how do you not get nightmares? The first to come at me was my classmate Kyle, who'd had it out for me since childhood, rallying others to bully me, maybe out of sheer humiliation. As the whispers grew louder, I flushed crimson and squared up to argue with him, neck stiff with defiance. It ended with me throwing punches, and in the scuffle, we both tumbled into the venue's swimming pool. Mom dragged me home with a stormy face after I made a complete fool of myself at the gala. Mom, heartbroken and humiliated, I tried to hug her but she shoved me away. Then she slapped me hard across the face. Can't even tame your own orc. What an embarrassment to our family. She looked at me with exasperation, dragged me before the mirror, and pointed at the hideous scar on my face. Look at this wretched state you're in, all for some orc. How could I have raised such a disgraceful daughter? That night, I lost my temper with Hale for the first time. Through tears I asked him why he'd abandoned me there alone, why he'd treated me this way. As I sobbed uncontrollably, Hale just coldly tossed out one sentence: if you're unhappy with me, you can adopt another beast man. The next morning, I got up early to make him a lavish breakfast, then humbly tried to explain myself. I never intended to adopt another beast kin. Back then, I arrogantly assumed he was just jealous and throwing a tantrum, upset that I didn't understand his aloof nature. Terrified I might actually want another beast kin, convinced I'd abandon him, I sat there lifeless all night, weeping until dawn. Watched the sky outside shift from darkness to first light. Hale left right after getting up. I'm sure he noticed something was off with me, yet never bothered to ask. My stomach growled loudly before I realized I hadn't eaten since yesterday noon. The dining table stood empty. In this house, if I don't cook, Hale simply goes out to eat on his own. Rubbing my aching stomach, I went to the kitchen and made myself a steaming bowl of noodles. The awakening taste buds pulled me out of my self-pitying mood. Scarlet, this can't go on any longer, I murmured to myself. I briskly cleaned the kitchen, packed all my belongings, and methodically erased every trace of my presence in this home. Hale, since you desire freedom, I shall grant it to you. I left him a note with just a few simple words. I'm sorry my rescue came between you and Mona. From now on, you'll have to fight for your own future with her. After paying $9 at the Orc Adoption Center to finalize the termination of guardianship paperwork, I mailed Hale his copy and boarded a flight to Heisher. Gazing at the blue sky and white clouds outside the window, my mind has never felt so clear. Letting go of the past turned out to be this simple after all. Sea City is a place where every home has trees and every household blooms with flowers. Raising an adult orc used to be no different than feeding a money pit to make ends meet. I had no choice but to become a corporate drone working 996 hours. Here, I landed my dream job at a nursing home and rediscovered my long-neglected passion for writing. Occasionally during downtime, I'd scroll through my phone. Hale must have received that agreement by now. I opened WeChat to complete silence. not a single message, not entirely unexpected, really. I was always the one initiating contact between us. I wouldn't call it disappointment, just, after raising him for 5 years. Was a simple goodbye too much to ask? It's been 2 months since I left, and not once has my family reached out, ever since Mom and my stepdad had Mona. All her energy went into their new family. Who's got time to care about me? Bet they don't even realize I've left Spring City by now. Even if they knew, they wouldn't care where I went. I chuckled bitterly, tossed my SIM card into the lake, and got myself a new number. Consider this a clean break from my past life. If no one loves me, I'll love myself properly for once. The elderly at the nursing home all adore me. They often gather around, sharing stories of their youth with me. Their affection was equally straightforward. They'd often surprise me with all sorts of handmade gifts. Sometimes it was a custom coffee mug from pottery class bearing my name, other times homemade fruit wine or sun-dried preserves. Through them, I experienced a depth of paternal care I'd never known before. Eventually, the gifts piled up so much they overflowed my entire desk. My colleagues often joke about being envious of me. Who'd have thought anyone would envy me? I quietly touched the scar on my face. I've always been seen as a failure. Could I really be worthy of affection? That day, Granny Sophia had a heart attack. I called for medical help and we were up dealing with it until late at night. Rubbing my sore shoulders, I wearily trudged toward the office. Rounding the corner, I spotted a tall figure sneaking out of my office. My heart leaped into my throat. I thought it was a burglar. Stop right there. I mustered my courage and called out to him. The figure hesitated, then bolted away. In the end, it was my cry of pain that made him halt. He turned and ran toward me, kneeling down to examine my ankle that I'd just twisted. The face hidden in the shadows finally came into view. His sharp, handsome nose was now beaded with anxious sweat. Leo. Following my memory, I hesitantly called out the name in my mind, my voice trembling with disbelief. He was the lion man I'd once helped at the orphanage. Leo kept his distance from everyone else, but clung to me like a shadow, following me everywhere. He nuzzled my arm affectionately with his head, begging me to take him in, but I already have a werewolf. His name is Hale. I watched the light fade from his eyes as he stood there, this nearly 2-meter tall man looking utterly lost and dejected. My heart ached, so I gave him a hug. Don't worry, I'll personally make sure to find you a good owner. I went through great lengths consulting numerous friends before finally finding the perfect girl for him. She came from an excellent family with high social standing, and was remarkably devoted. She'd always wanted a leonine mate. When I introduced Hale to her, she was thoroughly pleased and repeatedly assured me she'd treat him well. Over the following years, I made frequent inquiries about his well-being. Later, the girl moved abroad to a country that didn't allow beast-folk adoptions, so she abandoned him. I frantically asked about Leo's whereabouts, but no one knew. That stubborn pride runs deep in him. After being discarded, he cut all contact with us. That's what all my friends said when I asked them. During that time, I was consumed by guilt and sorrow, going without food for 3 whole days. I looked so haggard that even Hale, who usually couldn't be bothered with me, got alarmed, fearing I might starve myself to death. He personally made porridge and fed me. When I explained the whole situation to him, this is what he told me. TCH, I warned you not to meddle in others' lives. You're way out of your depth, eyes burning with indignation. That remark was meant for Leo as much as for himself, no doubt. I mechanically spooned the congee, slowly chewing on my guilt. Remember the last time I saw Leo? That day, I handed his leash to another. His new owner happily took his arm and walked toward the car. He pressed against the car window, gazing back at me with sorrowful persistence, watching until I disappeared from view. I suppose in that moment, he must have wished for me to ask him to stay. I snapped out of my reverie, staring at the crown of his head. After all these years of twists and turns, we somehow ended up in the same city again. His hair was disheveled, and he wore clothes that were years out of style. Gone was the meticulously groomed dandy. Now he looked unkempt, with rough calluses covering his hands. He's grown taller and more muscular, his skin tanned, with an intimidating aura that keeps strangers at bay. He must have endured considerable hardship these years. His azure eyes lifted, the initial agitation now replaced by composed calm. Don't worry, it's just superficial. No bones or tendons were injured. His tone was icy, yet his hands massaged my ankle with surprising tenderness. The tall man hunched awkwardly on the ground, patiently kneading for 15 minutes without complaint. Thank you. I took a few tentative steps. The pain had vanished, and thanked him with genuine gratitude. He never looked up at me again. Slowly rising to his feet as if to leave, I grabbed the hem of his sleeve. When he turned back, his icy glare made it clear he was being all cool and sulky. 3. I couldn't help but silently marvel. Even dressed like a beggar's sect elder, nothing could hide the regal bearing he was born with as a Leo. Maybe it was some sort of compensatory urge. I licked my lips. Wanna come with me? His piercing blue eyes locked onto me before he let out a cold laugh. With you? Don't you already have a beast man? I scratched my head, feigning nonchalance. Oh him, we've already terminated the adoption. He blinked, lowered his eyelids, maintaining that icy expression before uttering a flat, thinking he couldn't care less and that I'd been presumptuous again. I awkwardly loosened my grip on his sleeve. Suddenly, he bent down and swept me off my feet in a bridal carry. Which way to your place? I clung tightly to his neck, though his face remained stoic. The sparkling excitement in his eyes gave him away completely. I burst out laughing and pointed him in the right direction. Turns out Leo knew I'd come to Heisher all along. Some of those daily gifts I received were actually from him. He'd often bake my favorite chocolate cakes and mango mousse, then quietly leave them on my desk. That's when I discovered he was such an amazing cook. The next noon, Leo personally delivered a homemade lunchbox to me, right when an observant colleague spotted it. You know Leo. Zoe mentioned that Leo was a stray who wandered into Heisher. Beastmen abandoned by their owners rarely get adopted. So he's been alone all these years. Some were willing to adopt him, but his aloof personality and standoffish demeanor made most people back off. He's quite the go-getter, works multiple jobs to support several abandoned beastkin kids just like him. Zoe never stopped singing his praises. No wonder he's matured so much these years, though it's taken its toll on him, always out before dawn and back after dark. Clearly swamped with work. Would Leo be living a better life now if I hadn't made that selfish decision back then, at that moment? Guilt overwhelmed me completely. After work, he came to pick me up as usual, effortlessly taking my bag from me. Tall and handsome, he still radiated charm wherever he went, drawing admiring glances from young women. I came home to find a lavish dinner spread on the table, all my favorite dishes, steaming and aromatic. I kept opening my mouth to speak, but the words died on my lips each time I looked at him. Scarlett, are you truly worthy of this? For, as I studied his handsome, chiseled profile, an insistent voice kept rising from the depths of my heart. And so, what should have been a romantic candlelit dinner ended in heavy silence between them. For some reason, Leo also seemed preoccupied with his own thoughts. After washing the dishes, he took off his apron and said gloomily, I'm leaving. I won't bother you again. I quickly asked, why? Who said you were bothering me? He lowered his eyes. That awkward hesitation just now. This is what you wanted to tell me, isn't it? He let out a self-deprecating laugh. No need to say it this time. I'll leave on my own. Seeing his reddened eyes, I remembered how pitiful he'd looked that day, clinging to the car window, gazing at me with desperate hope. I couldn't help standing on tiptoe to stroke his drooping ears. His ears twitched sensitively against my palm, tickling me. Such a magical texture. This was my first time touching a beastman's ears. Seeing his wide-eyed, completely unguarded expression made my heart melt. Who said you could leave? Silly, I bit my lip. I wanted to ask, would you be my beast man? I'll take care of you. I lowered my head and held my breath waiting for his reply, but only silence followed. I finally couldn't help but look up, only to see a radiant smile lighting up his handsome face, his tail wagging like a helicopter rotor behind him. He kept nodding vigorously, too overwhelmed to speak. Seeing his goofy expression made my heart race with excitement too. But, you really don't mind? My face, I touched the gruesome scar on my face. He suddenly pulled me into his arms and planted a big kiss on my cheek. No way, no takebacks. Once it said, whoever goes back on their word is a puppy. I nodded vigorously and hugged him back tightly. Just like that, Leo and I officially became a couple, though still swamped with work every day. He never fails to drive me to and from work, prepares breakfast and dinner, and occasionally surprises me with flowers or little gifts. I'm thrilled inside, but I have to hold back from praising him too much, otherwise he gets carried away and always ends up pinning me on the couch, demanding kisses and cuddles as rewards. 5. On weekends, we'd hold hands while window shopping, catch a movie, and treat ourselves to a nice dinner out. Just like any ordinary couple, with him, I experienced a level of thoughtfulness and warmth I'd never known before. He noticed my long-standing insomnia with remarkable attentiveness, firmly took me to see a doctor, and would bring me warm milk. Every night before cradling me to sleep, no matter how late it got, he'd always wait until I fell asleep before returning to his own room. I often have nightmares about that devastating fire years ago, and about my mother hitting me in frustrated disappointment, yet he always rushes to my side without hesitation, gently kissing my sweaty forehead while whispering comforting words. "Hush now, I'm right here. I'll always stay with you." A sense of security I've never known before, a forsaken human and an abandoned beast man. He always warms and heals me with his actions. Leo's been increasingly busy lately, looking even thinner now. I texted him that today was a special occasion and he absolutely needed to come home early. As I placed the braised pork on the table, I took in the sight of the whole spread. Every dish looked and smelled amazing. I couldn't help but admire my handiwork with pride. I pulled out my phone to snap a photo and was about to send it to hurry him along when a knock came at the door. "Forgot your keys again," mumbling to myself as I opened the door. I realized it was high time to get a keypad lock. To my surprise, standing outside was someone I hadn't seen in ages. My smile froze when I saw Hale standing before me. "Scarlett, long time no see." Clearing his parched throat, he spoke first. I snapped out of my daze. How strange. Had he not appeared, I wouldn't have realized how long it had been since I last thought of him. "Long time no see." I gave him a polite smile. He gazed intently at my face, as if wanting to say something, but stepped into the room first. "Excuse me." I blocked his attempt to enter. Is there something you need? Let's talk here." I scratched my head sheepishly. My partner's the jealous type, doesn't really like me mingling with other beast folk. I made up these unflattering things about Leo, silently apologizing to him in my heart, but I pride myself on being a principled owner who knows better than to stay in touch with exes. "You got yourself a new beastkin." Hale looked utterly shocked. Unless I was mistaken, I even caught a glimpse of hurt in his eyes. "Yeah, his name's Leo, a lion beastkin." "Oh right, you two have met before, haven't you? But you already have me." Hale grew agitated, his large hands gripping my shoulders tightly like a wronged lover. I mumbled blankly, "We've already terminated the adoption agreement." I don't see why he's so worked up. I've completely moved on and won't bother him anymore. He should be relieved. "How could you be so heartless?" I caught a hint of resentment in his tone. "Didn't you say we could adopt other beast folk if it didn't work out? You're free to go find Mona now." Hale suddenly seemed to remember something and asked me anxiously, "Did you overhear my conversation with my friend?" I nodded with a relieved smile. "What's wrong with that? You could have told me directly all along. That way I could have set you free sooner." He stared at me blankly, lips trembling as if to speak again, but I'd already stopped listening. I checked my watch and gave him an apologetic smile. "Sorry, Leo will be back soon. I'd rather avoid any misunderstandings." With that, I closed the door. When Leo came back, I happily served him food. Normally he'd shower me with compliments, but today he was unusually quiet. I walked over and wrapped my arms around his waist. "Did something happen at work today? You can tell me anything that's bothering you." Seeing the concern in my eyes, Leo suddenly burst into tears, his nose and eyes turning red. Who would have thought that Leo, who always puts on such a cold front in public, turns into such a crybaby around me? As I fumbled to hand him tissues, he suddenly pulled me into a tight embrace and muttered hoarsely with defiance, "I won't eat. What's the point of a last supper anyway?" I can't keep up with his train of thought. No idea what's going through his mind all day. "Has Hale been here? I smell an unfamiliar beastman's scent in the house. Are you two going to reinstate the adoption? Are you going to abandon me again?" I let out a relieved sigh. So that's what this was about. I broke free from his embrace and gave him a sharp knock on the head. "What nonsense are you thinking about all day? He's into my sister. There's been no chance for us for ages." Seeing his pitiful, wronged expression, I sighed and walked into the bedroom, handing him a folder. "I was going to give this to you after dinner, but you're impossible to resist." His hands trembled as he opened the document, glancing between me and his name on the agreement, too overwhelmed to speak. "I've been too busy lately. Just got the chance today to pick it up. Our adoption application was submitted ages ago." Before I could finish, the usually aloof lion draped over me like an oversized house cat. licking my face and greedily nuzzling against my neck. He clung to me relentlessly, nuzzling his head against me affectionately before finally looking up with flushed cheeks. "Since you adopted me, can I sleep with you tonight, sis?" Those pleading, kittenish eyes made it impossible to refuse. The moment I nodded, he scooped me up toward the bedroom, keeping me awake till the wee hours. Never expected raising a big cat would drain both my wallet and energy. The WeChat notification chimed as I gasped for breath, swatting away the paw that had been roaming freely on my back. It was my childhood friend Yara messaging me, asking if Hale had come looking for me. She'd always known about our history, and now vented angrily in the chat. Right after getting the adoption termination papers, Hale went running to Mona, but she's too busy cuddling with her own little beastkin to give him the time of day. "This time you better get your act together. No going back to your ex." "Got it." Leo clung to me again from behind. I rolled my eyes skyward. "No way. Absolutely not. Even if I wanted to, it's impossible." Before bed, Leo kept rambling in my ear, endlessly daydreaming about our future together. One moment he'd brag about his savings, enough for a bigger house, a king-size bed. The next, he'd say my surgery funds were ready, that my face could be healed, money he'd scraped together for years. Can my face really be fixed? Must be dreaming. Drifting off to sleep, a hazy thought crossed my mind. Leo actually took me for plastic surgery. Turns out he'd always known how self-conscious I was about the scar on my face. All these years while drifting around, he'd been tracking down the country's top plastic surgeon in Sure, that's why he chose to settle there. The surgery went perfectly. Now my face is wrapped in thick bandages again, and the stitches won't come out for another 2 weeks. My colleagues from the nursing home specially brought some elderly residents to visit me. They brought flowers and fruits, saying the folks at the nursing home can't wait for me to return. So I'm actually needed by someone, me, who's always been treated as the family's good-for-nothing. The moment Scarlett arrived, I thought she was stunning, with her sweet temperament, endless patience, and diligent work ethic. She's just impossible not to adore. "I didn't even notice that scar on your face at first. Thought you might need surgery for some illness." "Oh dear, you gave me quite a fright." Granny Lila held my hand affectionately, her eyes brimming with tenderness as she looked at me. "But the surgery's for the best. I've always felt you've been carrying some burden in your heart, with the scar gone from your face. Perhaps the one in your heart will fade too." Moved, I nestled into her embrace while Leo sat nearby peeling an apple for me, occasionally glancing up with gentle warmth. "It feels so good to be loved and cared for." Talk about bad luck. I ran into Kyle, who's always had it out for me. While walking my grandparents home, he gave me a surprised look, then glanced at Leo standing beside me. "Impressive, Scarlett. Still fighting despite your condition." He gave me a thumbs up with a sleazy grin, his mind clearly wandering into some perverted fantasy. Since childhood, he's mastered the art of exploiting people's weaknesses. Utterly despicable. Leo shoved him away, eyes flashing a warning. "Don't talk about Scarlett like that, or you'll regret it." Without a care, he casually slapped Leo on the shoulder like an old friend. "Buddy, I just feel sorry for you. Our Scarlett is famously good-natured. She wouldn't mind. She used to spoil that werewolf of hers rotten, bending over backwards for him. What else could she do, being ugly to begin with? If she didn't pretend to be kind, who'd want her?" He deliberately shouted the word, ugly, toward the crowd. Onlookers gradually gathered, casting more and more scrutinizing glances my way. My fists clenched so tight they trembled, my whole body shaking as if transported back to that spring festival gala. Standing alone under the spotlight while the crowd stares bore into me, their pity, disgust, contempt, it all came crashing down like tidal waves, suffocating me. Leo felt my trembling, draped his jacket over my shoulders, then spun around and punched Kyle square in the face. "Didn't your mother teach you basic respect?" Then came another punch right after. "Do you even know what ugly looks like? Take a good look in the mirror at that spiteful face of yours. Now that's true ugliness." He stumbled over to me, panting and looking even more worked up than I was. "Let me make this clear. I love Scarlett. To me, she's the most beautiful and precious treasure in this world. You'd better steer clear of us next time, or I'll beat you to a pulp every time I see you." Blood and tears streamed down Kyle's face as he howled in pain. "You hit me. How dare you hit me? I'll sue you all. Everyone here is a witness." Before he could finish, Granny Lila grabbed her cane and started whacking his head repeatedly, swinging her cane. She sneered. Where did this ill-bred trash come from? Daring to mess with our Scarlet? Go ahead, sue me, my son's the best lawyer in Harbor City. You think I'm scared of you? The max fine for assault is $500. For scum like you, that's a bargain. Wait a second, let your grandma here start with $2,000 worth of beating first. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. What era is this? Still judging people by looks. Where are your manners? Look who's talking. A face only a mother could love, yet daring to mock others. Don't you know how to respect women? Serves you right getting beaten. Watching Kyle get beaten to a pulp and scurry away like a rat, I laughed through my tears. That stubborn girl who refused to cry at the grand event, who'd endured countless judgments about her appearance, finally made peace with herself and wept freely for her own sake. On my first day back at the nursing home, I ran into Hale again. Leo and I were walking hand in hand, laughing and chatting. When I spotted him standing alone at the main entrance, he stood there clutching a huge bouquet of roses, gazing at me with puppy dog eyes, looking noticeably thinner. Leo protectively shielded me behind him as I gently stroked his ears. Good boy, let me say a proper goodbye to him. He wagged his tail and affectionately nuzzled his head against me. I'll pick you up after work. I nodded with a smile. Scarlet, watching Leo and me being intimate, Hale concealed the disappointment in his eyes and called my name anxiously. It wasn't until they stood before me that they noticed my face had completely healed. The scar had vanished, and after 5 years, my left cheek was smooth again. Your face, it's healed, I nodded, replying with a hint of sweetness. Leo spent years consulting top specialists for me. The surgery was just performed recently. His eyes held a complex emotion. You're beautiful. It shames me to say, in these 5 years together, I've never done anything for you. Then he pleaded with me almost desperately. Scarlet, I was wrong. Please come back to me. Let me make it up to you. I froze for a moment, then shook my head firmly. We're over. Besides, I'm with Leo now. He hung his head in silence before suddenly looking up, eyes rimmed red. I don't care about titles or labels. I froze in shock. Never did I expect the once arrogant Hale could utter such humble words. 6. Frantically gripping my shoulders, he continued in a flustered rush. I was wrong before. I thought I'd always loved Mona, but I overlooked how good you've been to me. Only after you left did I realize how much you've sacrificed for me. I can't live without you. The truth is, I don't love Mona. I just can't stand losing. Out of sheer resentment, I'd been romanticizing the path I didn't take. I was such a fool. Give me another chance, please. I sighed inwardly. It was too late. My love for him had long withered away under the daily emotional neglect. Looking back at those days of groveling submission, it felt like living in perpetual darkness. How foolish I'd been. Hale, the old me would have been thrilled to hear you say that, but not anymore, because I don't love you now. I don't need you to compromise yourself for me. It wasn't until I met Leo that I understood what true love really is. Love means supporting each other and growing better together, not torturing one another. I wiped the tears from his face. Since you've missed the sun, don't miss the moon too. Next time you meet someone you love, be brave. It's not that hard. These words are for you, and for myself too. I hope you can let go sooner too. With that, I walked into the office building, ignoring Hale's tearful calls. Hale stood outside my office for 3 days and nights under the scorching sun. The dean feared he'd get heatstroke and die, so I called his friend to arrange a ride home. Scarlet, let me stay with you, please. I'm begging you. He weakly clung to the hem of my clothes, refusing to let go. I sighed. These 5 years with you, I've got a clear conscience. Let's part ways amicably. His friend couldn't bear to see it and spoke up for him. Are you really not going to reconsider? You loved him so much before. I smiled and said, go back to those days of losing myself. I wouldn't last a minute. The man glanced at me, then at Leo waiting nearby, nodding with regret. At dusk, Leo and I strolled along the beach. I skipped along the waves, savoring the most carefree moment of the day. Scarlet, Leo suddenly knelt on one knee, pulling out a diamond ring as he gazed at me tenderly. We lost our chance once before. This time, I don't want to lose you again. Will you marry me? Let me spend the rest of my life by your side, loving and protecting you. I leaned down to kiss his cheek, then turned toward the ocean and shouted, He swept me up in his arms, spinning me around with childlike joy. After we got married, I took Leo to meet my mom. She was wearing a sharp business suit and gave me a once-over. That glowing face of yours tells me marriage agrees with you. Don't think I was cold to you before. I just couldn't stand seeing you settle for less. Watching you with that hail is like looking at a mirror of my younger self with your father, bending over backwards for a man, always tiptoeing around his ego. She shrugged nonchalantly. Thankfully, I came to my senses and divorced him. A woman should never lose herself in love. I nodded. Now I understand. True love isn't about constant compromise, but about growing better together. Ending a relationship doesn't mean you're not good enough. It just means you haven't met the right person yet. Story 2. I died in the third year of a zombie apocalypse, a time when resources were scarce and the world had become unimaginably tough. Betrayed by my fiancé and best friend, I was pushed into a horde of zombies over an expired can of food. Suddenly, I opened my eyes and realized I had been given a second chance at life. Checking the date on my phone, I found I had 1 month before the zombie outbreak began. Living alone, I had a villa in the suburbs left to me by my parents, though I usually stayed in the university dorms. On the day the zombies took over, my fiancé and best friend happened to be at my villa. Known for my hoarding tendencies and compulsive shopping, I had amassed a substantial stockpile: 20 bags of flour weighing 100 kilograms each, 120-kilogram barrels of olive oil, and dozens of tons of purified water in the basement. My several giant freezers were packed with 200 kilograms each of pork, lamb, and beef, as well as assorted frozen foods. The number of instant meals and snacks was countless, with dozens of boxes of various flavored noodles alone. Exaggeration aside, if these supplies never expired, they could last me a lifetime. The storage room, spanning 20 square meters, was filled to the brim with non-perishable items like paper goods, blankets, clothing, and toiletries. Everyone was amazed by my foresight, especially Anderson, who kept praising my forward thinking. With these supplies, the three of us managed to stay in the villa. By the third year, as supplies began to decay and spoil, we were forced to venture out for food. It was only then, on the brink of death, that I learned my engagement to Anderson was a sham, merely a ploy to secure the house, and he had been having an affair with my friend Tiffany the whole time. Upon waking up from this nightmare, I immediately sought to avoid any complications by obtaining a fake medical emergency document to take a leave of absence from school. My guidance counselor, seeing me so close to death yet personally handling my academic leave, was moved to tears, almost to the point of prostrating in gratitude. It really wasn't necessary. After successfully managing my leave, I blocked everyone's contact. Following the logic of campus legends, rumors of my death would likely circulate within 3 days. That suited me fine. It was as if I was being let off like a fart. Since I had a chance to start over, I decided to sever ties with everyone. Leaving school, I accessed all the savings my parents had left me and immediately hired people to fortify my villa. The perimeter fence was raised by 2 meters, topped with barbed wire and high-voltage electricity, including sharp spikes. The main gate was reinforced with triple-layered security mesh, strong enough to resist even a power saw. I also had workers dig a deep trench around the villa to trap any approaching zombies. The interior, including the basement, was reinforced with iron plates to make it airtight. Solar panels were installed on the roof, and I brought in 2 generators from a nearby factory to prepare for potential power outages. I cleared the original garden to grow crops and stocked up on various seeds and agricultural books. Knowing that water would be scarce in the apocalypse, I converted every spare room in the villa into water storage. The rooms previously occupied by Anderson and Tiffany were now storerooms. After making these basic modifications to the villa, my next step was to make extensive purchases. I liquidated all my cash and maxed out available loans, steering clear of untrustworthy lending services. Thankfully, online loans helped me gather $5 million. Coincidentally, the largest online shopping festival was happening just 3 days after my rebirth. During these 3 days, while workers reinforced the villa, I shopped relentlessly, stocking up on grains, condiments, toiletries, medical supplies, and ready-to-eat snacks. I claimed every possible coupon and took advantage of every deal, determined to get the most value for my money. When the shopping festival began at midnight, I used my 2 decades of singlehood-honed reflexes to swiftly check out my cart, even snagging many freebies and substantial prizes due to the large amounts I spent. Thanks to the shopping festival, I managed to get nearly 10 million worth of supplies from the supermarket for just 4 million. That night, I went to sleep utterly content. In the days that followed, I was busy receiving deliveries. I organized all the parcels in various storage rooms of my villa, categorizing them meticulously. To maximize space, I dismantled all the packaging boxes but didn't throw them away. Instead, I piled them up on an empty lot of the villa. These cardboard boxes are quite versatile. They can serve as beds or even as firewood. During the days spent remodeling the house and waiting for deliveries, I scavenged through Temu and seafood markets, picking up all sorts of odd items that seemed useless to others: old fishing lines, flint, matches, climbing ropes, drones, camouflage outfits, and professional outdoor gear like storm jackets and hiking boots. These survival tools are usually expensive when new, but I found some second-hand ones that were almost new and at a fraction of the cost. I wasn't fussy about new or old. As long as they worked, that was enough. After finishing the house renovations, I started going out. I needed to buy some items that weren't available online. Like weapons, I had already purchased baseball bats and zwilling chef knives, but I was cautious about searching and buying them too frequently as it might attract the attention of cyber police. I didn't want to waste my precious time dealing with police and explaining why I suddenly prepared so many supplies. In my country, getting weapons was always tricky. I put a lot of effort into it, delving deep into hidden alleys. Eventually, I actually found it: a black market. Weapons were pricey, and the million I had left wasn't enough to buy much. Moreover, the leader of the black market made me nervous. He was incredibly handsome, with a suffocating masculinity. Just his gaze made my calves tremble. I quickly bought 2 guns and 5 magazines of bullets, along with 2 knives, and then I wanted to leave. But as I turned to go, I heard, "Wait, give her 2 more hand grenades." Holding the 2 hand grenades, I was completely at a loss. The man, with a cigarette dangling from his lips, suddenly smiled and asked, "Young lady, what are you buying these for?" I kept my head down, silent. He asked again, "Do you know how to use them?" I softly replied, "I've seen them used on TV." He scoffed. All right. I was thrilled to have purchased the weapons, but upon returning to the villa, I encountered an unwelcome sight. Anderson and Tiffany were at the doorstep of my villa, and I saw him using a crowbar on my door. I was almost furious. My door, which cost 100,000 to install, was being tampered with. The zombies haven't even arrived yet, and if you dare damage it, I'd shoot you right away. With a gun in hand, I felt incredibly empowered. I caught them red-handed trying to pick the lock, and there was a moment of awkwardness. However, Anderson quickly accused me anxiously. "Armani, I heard from the counselor that you were critically ill with brain cancer. Why didn't you tell me?" Tiffany added, "Yeah, Armani, why did you block us? Do you know how worried we were?" They stood there as if on a moral high ground, as if under a halo of saintliness. As if I had brain cancer. If I didn't have cancer in my brain, why would I have fostered these 2 ingrates for 3 years in my past life? Now, their urgency is evident, but do they really think I can't see the excitement in their eyes? If I die, being without an heir, they could claim my villa for themselves. Unfortunately for them, with the apocalypse less than a week away, every second counts for me. I don't have time to deal with them and need to get inside. Yet, I hear Anderson's odd voice from behind. "Armani, why did you remodel the house like this?" My heart suddenly skipped a beat. 9. "It's probably the fear of being unable to pay back a high-interest loan and getting chopped up," said a chilling voice near my ear. This time, my heart didn't just skip a beat. It nearly stopped altogether. It was the crime boss. "Louis, it really is this little girl. She vanished into thin air after borrowing our money." One of his henchmen pointed at me and shouted. Anderson and Tiffany looked at me suspiciously. "Armani, what's this about a high-interest loan?" Seeing their worried faces, one might think I had meddled with their very livelihoods. I decided to concoct a story on the spot. I fell ill, and all my money went into my treatment. I didn't want to mortgage the house left by my parents, so I borrowed 5 million with high interest to cover medical expenses. 5 million. Both Anderson and Tiffany were shocked, but before they could say anything more, the crime Boss clicked his tongue impatiently, his presence overwhelmingly commanding. In an instant, Anderson, Tiffany, and I obediently lined up like little chicks, almost ready to bow and greet him respectfully. Can either of you help her repay the loan? Anderson and Tiffany shook their heads with complex expressions, prompting a scoff from the crime boss. Then get lost. Do you want to end up maimed like her? Anderson and Tiffany scurried away, leaving me standing alone and vulnerable in the cold wind. Armani, debtor number 001, you've taken out a loan of $500,000 from us. With a compound interest rate of 10, today is the repayment date. Not bad, girl, using my money to buy weapons from me. Time to pay up, the crime boss said, puffing on a cigarette and holding a ledger, ready to collect the debt. I swear to heaven I never took such a morally bankrupt loan. I suspected the crime boss was pulling a fast one on me, but I dared not utter a word, with less than a week before a zombie outbreak. Except for the live poultry and seafood I ordered, only the water purification system had yet to arrive. I did the math, feeling desolate. I had budgeted too tightly, forget 50,000, I couldn't even scrape together 500. I pulled a hand grenade from my coat. Big brother, would this do? The crime boss glanced at the grenade in my hands. Using the things I gave you to settle your debts. Armani, you really have some nerve. I humbly replied. It's okay, isn't it? Who else did you borrow from? I can't remember. He scoffed again. Wow, you really are something. In the end, the crime boss left without getting any money, even taking 2 buckets of red paint he said were too heavy to carry. According to his henchmen, carrying red paint is standard when they go out to collect debts. However, they had never seen a fortified villa like mine. It was such a mess that it didn't need any more trashing. Looking at my postmodern Chinese-style villa, I sneered in the manner of the crime boss. Pfft, what do they know? I cheerfully placed the paint on a small cart and wheeled it into the house. This was a great find. The smell of the paint could numb the zombie's sense of smell. Truly an unexpected gain. The crime boss came to collect debts again, this time by himself. When he arrived, I was digging a trench in front of my villa, with the sunlight behind him. His expression was unclear while I stood in the trench, covered in dirt. It seemed he had no intention of burying me alive, so I began to feel more at ease, setting up fishing lines and twisting hemp ropes in the trench, determined to make it the last line of defense against all zombies. After a while, he left without saying a word. He really was a strange man. With less than 3 days to the zombie outbreak, I've entered the final sprint of my preparations. The chicks, ducklings, and piglets that I purchased are all penned up, and the fish, shrimp, and crabs are now in the pond that I had dug in my backyard. The custom-made water recycling purifiers and water distillation systems have been installed, ensuring a reliable water supply for the later stages of the apocalypse. Due to the large quantity of goods I ordered online, I encountered some after-sales issues, leaving me no choice but to opt for a refund. This gave me some extra cash, including my last bit of credit card and Alipay credit. I'm ready to go out for one final shopping spree. According to my plan, I will spend most of the first 3 years of the apocalypse in my villa, to keep myself entertained. I've downloaded a plethora of novels, TV shows, movies, and games onto every electronic device I own, including TVs, computers, tablets, a Nintendo Switch, and a PS5. I also hauled a truckload of outdated comic books and magazines from a local second-hand book market back to my warehouse. After reading, I can use them as fuel for fire, making good use of waste. This setup should nicely pass the time during my solitary apocalypse days. In my last life, it was always me who went out to find food while Tiffany and Anderson made excuses, one out of fear and the other to guard our supplies, to avoid leaving the house. This time, I'm not playing the martyr. First, I drove the small truck my father used for his business to pick up several barrels of diesel. It was hard to come by, and it will fuel my 2 vehicles, the small truck and an SUV. Then, I drove to the largest supermarket in town. After careful calculations, I figured I could still spend a total of $200,000 with my cash and new bank cards. I posed as a small supermarket owner stocking up on supplies and checked my inventory for any last-minute needs. My focus this time was on perishable greens. I planned to store half in the fridge and turn the other half into pickles. Any that spoiled could still feed my chickens, ducks, and geese. The supermarket manager was thrilled with a customer like me boosting his KPIs. He even kindly assigned a tall and burly loader to help me, but when I saw him, I froze for a second. Recognizing the familiar scent of fear, it was Black Boss again. This was no ordinary loader. The manager had set me up with a top-tier problem. His sharp glance threw me a warning, as if to say, make a wrong move, and you're dead. Surprisingly, once Black Boss changed into the supermarket uniform and toned down his gangster vibe, he almost looked like an innocent young man. I heard the manager call him Louis. Watching a notorious black market boss actually move goods for me was surreal. As he exerted himself, the perfect muscle lines on his arms and neck swayed before my eyes, challenging my limits and making me a bit giddy. Did your loan sharking business finally go under? I blurted out, unable to help my sharp tongue. He shot me a sideways glance. Even if it did, you still owe me money, right? Right. I nodded nonchalantly, with the apocalypse just days away. 500,000 wouldn't even be worth a bag of rice, and I had plenty of rice. Maybe my attitude wasn't sincere. Enough, as Louis suddenly stopped and frowned at me. You got brain cancer. I struggled internally, feeling like admitting so would make me seem like a deceitful woman on her deathbed, but then my conscience kicked in. No, I'm fine, I was just tricking them. Louis's expression was unreadable as he asked, why? I softly replied, they did bad things to me. Louis nodded, his tone fierce. Good, because if you don't pay up, I'll have to kill you. Is this man allergic to romance? With such a sad atmosphere, he still dwells on this. As I was about to leave, he suddenly asked, Armani, if you come across someone who deeply hurt you in the past, what would you do? I thought about it. Here's a translation that captures the essence without being too literal. Speaking seriously, you can't always think about biting back when bitten by a dog. I will continue to live my life earnestly on my chosen path. But if they hurt me again, I will make sure to strike first. Louis smiled, a smile that reminded me of the high school heartthrob I once had a crush on. Pure, clear, dazzling. It wasn't until he looked at me quizzically that I hurriedly shifted my gaze away. When it was time to part ways with Louis, he suddenly said to me, little trickster, don't go out anymore after you get back. Sitting in the car, I tilted my head in confusion. Suddenly, the news on the supermarket TV began broadcasting. Currently, a new virus is spreading in our city. Please wear masks when going out and avoid crowded places. I sharply turned to look at Louis. His expression was enigmatic, his lips parted as he silently mouthed to me, let's go. I drove home in a panic, thinking I had planned everything well, but I had overlooked one thing. The apocalypse might not arrive instantly. Perhaps in the densely populated university towns and city centers, signs had already been visible. Once home, I immediately started up the generator, connected the external high-voltage power, and pulled up the wooden planks over the trenches. With mixed emotions, I lay in bed. Unbelievably, I dreamt of Louis, his inscrutable gaze haunting me through the night. I did not sleep well. 2 days before the zombie outbreak, I dared not leave the house. I began to inventory my final resources and, with what I had, drew up a 10-year plan. Only through disciplined and controlled use of supplies could one survive the apocalypse. Keeping a daily journal was a habit of mine, so this was not difficult. Most of the food would spoil within 1 to 2 years, though freezing could slow this process. Thanks to preservatives, my stockpiled items like instant noodles, canned goods, and compressed biscuits would last many years. However, after 5 years, livestock and aquaculture products would need to be my main food sources. Fortunately, having helped my grandmother feed chickens and ducks and harvest crops in my childhood would now come in handy. The villa's garden was too small for a greenhouse, so I crafted a simple one myself. After making records, I went into the kitchen to pickle the large amount of vegetables I had just bought into sauerkraut. As I looked at the vegetables filling the kitchen, Louis's figure floated before my eyes. I shook my head. Stop thinking about it, Armani. This might be the last time you see him. In an apocalypse where life was cheap, everyone struggled to survive. I just wanted to lie low in my villa. Louis, from the moment I saw him, I knew he was destined for greater things. We were from completely different worlds. I stored the pickled vegetables in the villa's cellar. After a busy day, I treated myself generously. Despite hoarding so much, I still indulged. For dinner, I had sweet and sour chili peppers, braised prawns, and winter melon pork rib soup. it tasted fantastic. Even if there was no room for creativity in the apocalypse, my cooking skills had not dulled, having experienced the apocalypse before. I especially cherished food and finished all the dishes with 2 bowls of rice. After dinner, I started watching a series. Watching the half-finished series, I felt it was a pity. If I didn't start the advanced playback now, this series would just get buried. The huge gap in the social status of the male and female leads. Will they end up together or not? Damn, I really want to know. Just as the plot reached its climax, suddenly noisy shouting came from outside. Armani, open the door. Armani, something's happened. Let us in. It was Anderson and Tiffany. My face instantly darkened, a shadow falling over my eyes. As I left the room, I had armed myself with a gun purchased from Lewis. The entire villa was fortified to be completely airtight. As I approached the door, only a wall separated me from them. Hearing me open the door, Anderson and Tiffany were visibly excited, shouting, Armani, hurry and open up. I remained silent. Armani, zombies have appeared in the college town, just like in the movies. We barely escaped. Let us in first, Tiffany pleaded. Anderson added, yes, Armani. It's too dangerous for a girl to live alone in the suburbs. Let us in, I will protect you. I couldn't help but let out a sarcastic chuckle. Protect me, how shameless one must be to utter such words. My laughter made their shouting even more frantic. Suddenly, they quieted down. Through the door, Anderson's voice carried a chilling resentment. Armani, why won't you let us in? How can you stand by and do nothing? Do you know something? And why has your villa suddenly turned into this fortress? Images of Lewis questioning me flashed through my mind. I had always been worried about attracting police attention, but now, it seemed the time had come. My custom-made door had 3 layers, an outer stainless steel security gate, a middle layer of electrified wire mesh, and the innermost actual door. I suddenly opened the door. The calculating and vicious expressions on Anderson and Tiffany's faces were evident. Too late to hide, they had many injuries, and I was quite satisfied with the effectiveness of my traps. On seeing me, they stiffened momentarily, then quickly switched to ingratiating smiles. I smiled back and then raised the gun in my hand. Bang, that was just an exclamation, but it terrified Anderson and Tiffany out of their wits. Anderson even screamed and hid behind Tiffany. Seeing their pathetic state, I suddenly found it all very dull. Did I really want to stain my hands with the blood of such despicable people? I chose to reconcile with myself. Consider me a saint if you will. Ignoring their horrified faces, I shut the door and left. That night, I slept unusually soundly. However, in the middle of the night, I thought I heard something in my sleep, but when I got up the next day to check, I found nothing. Today marked the day when the zombie apocalypse had fully erupted in my previous life. I spent the entire day in front of the television, watching as one after another, the stations that were still broadcasting either turned into news programs or static. It felt as though the world had changed in an instant. That evening, I turned on the serialized TV show I had been following. Unsurprisingly, it hadn't been updated. In that moment, as the dust settled in my heart, there was also a tinge of regret. My life of solitude in the post-apocalyptic world had officially begun. My villa, located in a remote area, rarely saw zombies even in my previous life. With my preparations this time, I hadn't seen a single zombie yet. Occasionally, the sound of passing vehicles would suddenly tense my nerves. In this post-apocalyptic world, the malice of human hearts could be even more frightening than the zombies themselves. I suddenly realized there was a small problem with the chickens and ducks I had bought previously. Watching them, even though they were from the same batch, several underdeveloped chicks and ducklings that only ate but didn't grow had me falling into silence. I thought, maybe I should just eat them today, as just feeding them without growth isn't really working out. What kind of household can sustain such a consumption? However, considering the value of live poultry, I cautiously searched online. Although many websites were abandoned in the early days of the apocalypse, a few were still accessible. After some searching, I discovered that among my batch of meat chickens and ducks, 2 looting chickens and 2 cold ducks had somehow been mixed in. I wondered if they had been mistakenly caught while eloping. The very evening I decided to eat those small, non-growing creatures. As I was sharpening my knife, they each laid an egg. Hesitating for a moment, I marveled at the greatness of nature's life and the animal's will to survive. I put down the kitchen knife and took out the egg incubator I had purchased in advance. I became fascinated with incubating eggs. Every morning as soon as I woke up, I couldn't help but check on those 2 eggs. A week later, I examined the eggs under a light and saw the faintly beating hearts and gradually growing blood vessels inside, which made my eyes tear up a bit. In the apocalypse, new life always brought joy. In the following days, I acted like a diligent chicken mother. Looting chickens and cold ducks have different incubation times and environmental needs. Looting chickens take 16 days, while cold ducks need 26 days, and duck eggs require higher humidity than chicken eggs. Every day, I recorded the conditions of these 2 eggs. Half a month passed by unnoticed. This morning, when I went to check on my eggs as usual, the looting chicken egg was supposed to be close to hatching, but there was still no movement. Fearing it might suffocate inside, I carefully made a small hole in the shell with tweezers. I spent the whole day squatting beside it, even skipping meals. When I saw the tiny beak of the looting chicken poking through the hole I made, I couldn't help but cry tears of joy. The little looting chicken was born, and I named it Reserve Ration Number 1. I brought its mother to see her, but she was too busy indulging in love and had no interest in childcare. She pretended to look for a moment and then fluttered away after securing another egg as a protection fee. I looked at the freshly laid, still warm egg and Reserve Ration Number 1 in my hand, gritting my teeth and thinking, today, I'm going to raid your home. In the end, I marked the new egg and placed it in the incubator. After checking on the still developing cold duck, I went to water the fruits and vegetables in my garden. While watering, I suddenly heard the cries of a zombie outside. My spirits immediately lifted. A living, moving zombie. This might very well be the first zombie I've encountered since the apocalypse began. It even excited me a bit. I opened the inner door and felt a strange sense of familiarity when I saw the stumbling, limb-missing zombie outside. Living alone for so long, even a zombie seemed attractive to me. But once the novelty wore off, I immediately turned around to grab my machete. Strangely, when I returned, the zombie had vanished. Puzzled, I wondered if it had wandered off somewhere else. I peered around but saw no sign of the zombie, so I reluctantly put down the knife. Although itching for some action, I clearly preferred this more laid-back lifestyle. The looting chicken grew quickly, able to walk and feed itself independently within a week. She was a girl who enjoyed frolicking around the house, leaving little droppings as a mark of her presence. Small, cute, and particularly irritating, the day finally came for the cold duck to hatch, which proved much more challenging than the looting chicken. Fortunately, with some experience under my belt, although it was a close call, I managed. But ultimately, I succeeded in having a great son who shares no blood relation with me and is even of a different race. Recently, a very practical problem presented itself right before me. I sat solemnly in my vegetable garden, observing the main culprits that were forming factions right in front of me. It had been nearly 2 months since the birth of Reserve Food No. 1, and the Rudden chickens only needed 1.5 months to reach maturity. Considering the daily offerings from the initial Rudden chicken, I estimated that I owned about 30 chickens, which would soon contribute to expanding the flock at the rate of 1 egg per day. Enough already. I forced myself to stop this dreadful calculation, just as I was worrying about how to deal with the chicks I had hatched myself. I suddenly heard from outside the door, "Hello, Quick Money Loans. Come to rob money, debtor No. 001. When are you planning to repay?" I sharply turned my head, suppressing the surprise in my heart, and asked, "Who?" The person outside was clearly impatient, and I unconsciously imagined him scoffing with a cigarette in his mouth. "Your creditor." I opened the small window in the door and peered through the layers of iron mesh at the person outside. Perhaps because of my incredulous stare, he couldn't help but chuckle. Dazzled for a moment, my expression grew even more puzzled. Lewis took out his collection book. Debtor No. 001, Armani, currently 3 installments overdue, with compound interest. You owe a total of 200,000 this period. Seeing my complicated expression, he raised an eyebrow. "Any problems?" I said. "I might look foolish in your eyes, but I'm not blind," Lewis scoffed, showing me the empty ledger. "So, you're not paying?" I earnestly nodded. "I don't have the money." However, just then, a Rudden chicken walked over my foot and left a pile of droppings on my shoe. Seized by a sudden courage, I grabbed the chick and passed it through the small window towards Louis. Just as my hand was about to touch the high-voltage iron mesh, he suddenly frowned. Wait, this was the first time I saw Louis raise his voice, and I shivered, my calves trembling again as I reached out. He pursed his lips, seeing the rotten chicken revealed in my open palm. His eyebrows almost twisted into knots, thinking he was dissatisfied with my offering. I tried hard to sell it. Don't be fooled by its size. This chicken breeds very quickly, producing a brood in just 1.5 months, and it tastes almost like a regular chicken, very delicious. Louis and the little chicken in my palm stared at each other, seemingly still unsatisfied. I had no choice but to grab a few more. Trying to win by quantity, through the door, I handed him the chicks one by one. I called out to him, "Take them, quick," as if I were an overly attentive mother. After a brief silence, Louis took the chickens. The moment our fingers touched, I felt a slight burn. Later, as there were too many chicks, Louis couldn't hold them all and stuffed them into his pockets. When Louis left, I saw reserve food no one poking its head out of his pocket. It looked up defiantly, flapping its wings against its chest as if questioning my conscience. As Louis walked away, he left a remark. "This will only count as interest." After dealing with Louis, I breathed a sigh of relief. I was quite pleased. The problem of too many rotten chickens was neatly solved. Today is our country's Lunar New Year. My apple tree in the backyard has also reached its fruitful harvest season. Hearing the familiar jumbled sounds outside the house, I glanced through the peephole and opened the door. Seeing my outfit, Louis paused for a second. "What are you doing?" his tone unsure. I looked down at my floral jacket, touched my green headscarf, and noticed one hand was dusty. The red and green outfit was quite the sight. "I'm picking apples," I replied. He seemed somewhat skeptical. "Here to collect debts again?" I asked. Louis nodded. I laughed. What a coincidence. I handed him a bag of apples. "Let these apples offset the debt." Apples, the fruit of peace. "I wish you well." As he took the apples and before leaving, he said with his back towards me, "Happy New Year." I was momentarily stunned, then softly replied, "Happy New Year." After my parents passed away, I got used to spending New Year's alone. In these apocalyptic times, resources are precious, so I didn't splurge, just prepared a few exquisite dishes. I took out some sausages I had made with a stuffer that had been airing out and tasted quite good. Maybe next time Louis comes, I can use them to offset the debt. Suddenly, I found that today Louis seemed especially easy to appease. A few apples were enough to send him on his way. I hope it stays this way, amen. At night, I took out an old book I had scavenged before the apocalypse and read it with great interest. After some time, I turned off the light, finished my reading notes, and went to bed early. That night, I had a wonderful dream featuring my dearly departed parents. With no zombies in sight, time flies, and soon after the new year, it was already heading towards April. Recently, I discovered tadpoles in my pond, already with tails and hind legs when I found them. Let me discuss a highly controversial topic from the perspective of the origin of the universe. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? There are no frogs in my pond, so where did these tadpoles come from? Worried that the fish might eat these little tadpoles, I set aside a separate area of the pond for them. In the following days, I eagerly awaited the transformation of my tadpoles into bullfrogs, and eventually into spicy pickled bullfrogs. That was until Louis showed up again, when I mentioned to him that I might be able to offer him some bullfrogs next time. He fell silent for a second, then gave me a look that spoke volumes. "Armani, did you know, the tadpoles from March to April are all toads?" he said. My eyes widened in surprise. I slammed the door in anger, cutting off Louis's mocking laughter and outright refusing his request. "If I can't have bullfrogs, then neither can you. No one gets to benefit from this." Using the only working website I had left, I found out that indeed, the tadpoles from early spring, March and April, are all toads. Frog tadpoles aren't around until May. During the winter, toads burrow into the mud and hibernate in burrows they dig with their well-developed hind limbs. It seems that toads must have infiltrated my pond for hibernation early in the apocalypse. Reluctantly, I had to scoop all these tadpoles out. Although toads are good for crops, I really can't stand their appearance. Just as I was bagging the tadpoles, wondering how to proceed with the killing, I suddenly heard from outside, Once you've scooped them all up, give them to me. I'm giving you a break this time. Consider it interest." It was Louis. He hadn't left yet. As I handed him the bag, I curiously asked, "What do you want these tadpoles for?" He smiled, "To grow them and then go eat swan meat." He's always been handsome, but even more so when he smiles. Suddenly, I found myself looking forward to his next visit to collect debts. Recently, I've noticed an increase in the number of zombies. This is unusual. In my previous life, it took until the 3rd year for this to happen. If zombies are becoming more numerous even in my remote location, I wonder what it's like in the cities. I used my binoculars to check the surroundings and, seeing no abnormalities, I took my machete and swiftly killed all the zombies loitering near my villa. This was not difficult for me. After my parents passed away, I took up freestyle fighting, not to brag, but in our community, at the 52 kilograms level. I'm unbeatable. When Louis arrived, he just so happened to witness me slicing the last zombie's brain in half. Much like chopping vegetables, the brain bounced a couple of times on the ground, scattering brain matter along its path. Both Louis and I ended up focusing on the bouncing brain, even nodding slightly with its bouncing motion. Feeling his gaze, I smiled sheepishly. The blade of my large machete still dripping with some unidentifiable fluid. The atmosphere was weird yet somewhat comical. Louis watched me enter my house, and I hesitated about whether to invite him in. However, the state of the world made me hold back. Fortunately, it seemed Louis also had little interest in entering my rather unimpressive stronghold. We had reached some sort of understanding. He would visit periodically, and I would prepare goods to offer him in advance. This time, I had prepared a basket of potatoes. June was the prime season for potatoes. Unexpectedly, he refused to take them. I looked at him incredulously, wondering if he had lost his mind. It's the apocalypse. To think he didn't even want potatoes, how inflated must his ego be? Yet all he said was, "Armani, don't go out anymore. Leave the zombies outside alone. Others will handle them." I blinked, struggling to grasp his meaning. "People will handle it. You mean the property management will come with a forklift to remove the zombies?" I asked. Louis gave me a look that made me feel like a piece of rotting wood. Louis left, and the words he spoke as he departed inexplicably filled me with unease. Anxiety made it hard for me to sit still, and I suddenly regretted just watching him go without saying anything. Back at the villa, I moved from room to room, checking my supplies over and over, as if that could somehow make me feel secure. As days passed, the intervals between Louis's visits grew longer. Sometimes, I had to replace the supplies I had prepared as they were at risk of spoiling from the long wait. Then, 3 months went by without a sign of him. I reverted to my solitary lifestyle, no longer needing to worry about supplies. My planted fruits and vegetables were maturing orderly, and my supplies began to grow. Like a tireless squirrel, I started storing the surplus food using various methods to prepare for the second winter since the apocalypse. Living alone was exceedingly lonely, and despite the scarcity of resources in this post-apocalyptic world, I couldn't resist getting a pet. It was a cold duck I had hatched early on, whom I named Dada. Every morning, Dada would peck me awake at my bedside, his small, green bean-like eyes staring at me, reminding me of how you used to urge me to meet deadlines. Cold ducks don't eat much. Once grown, they eat 3 meals a day, and aside from their special duck feed, I would add some spoiled vegetables. Dada wasn't picky and ate everything like a garbage can. I was quite pleased with his practicality. Before winter officially began, Louis appeared again. At that time, I was harvesting radishes, imagining all the dishes and pickles I could make with them. He appeared silently at the door, and as if by telepathy, I hurried to open it, seeing Louis, thinner and darker, with a scent of blood and gloom that seemed too thick to dissipate. He looked exhausted. Tentatively, I asked, "Are you here to collect a debt?" He shook his head. "I came to see you." At that moment, my heart felt like it was about to leap out of my throat. He noticed my wide-open eyes and slightly curled his lips. Just as he was about to turn and leave, I suddenly spoke. "Louis, would you like to come in for a bit?" He turned, frowned at me, and said, "Armani, you still haven't learned." His sudden stern tone made me feel both sour and aggrieved. Louis left, and I had a feeling he wouldn't return this time. Another winter came around. In winter, there are few leafy greens available for consumption. Cabbage, spinach, and radishes are some of the few vegetables that withstand the cold. The piglets I had bought before the apocalypse had grown and had litters of their own, leading to an uncontrollable situation as my garden became increasingly crowded, and the smell was so strong it kept my head buzzing all day. Eventually, considering the limited space, I decided to turn to my pigsty. Slaughtering a pig alone was not easy. The boar, fat and heavy, was tied up by me, and I pinned its head under my foot. With a swift motion of my knife, I ended its life. I then butchered the whole pig, cleaned, and stored different parts separately. This task was far from easy for me. A full grown male pig about a year old weighs around 400 to 500 kilograms, not to mention the pork. Just the offal alone weighs about 50 kilograms. Their odor is so strong that even zombies would shake their heads at it. After 2 days of continuous work, I finally finished processing the entire pig. When I was done, I realized I had subconsciously set aside a portion. Looking at the extra 50 kilograms of pork and offal I had reserved, I fell silent for a moment. Then, I stored them separately in the freezer. As the new year approached, I carefully selected a perfectly shaped piece of pork belly and large intestines to roast. With the remaining quality meat, I made many dumplings filled with pork and green onions, pork with cabbage, and pork with pickled vegetables. I made the dough and rolled out the wrappers myself, shaping each dumpling like a little treasure, plump and mouth-watering. For the new year, fried dishes were a must. I enjoyed eggplant and lotus root patties, and also crispy fried pork. Used the eggplants I had harvested last summer. When I got the lotus roots, I felt somewhat reluctant to use them. Growing aquatic plants like lotus roots was too demanding, and eating them meant having less. As I finished up and looked back, I had prepared more this year compared to the last. With the sounds of zombies roaming outside the villa, the new year quietly arrived. Even though I was alone in the villa, I could sense that the spread of zombies this time was worse than in my previous life. I didn't know what was happening outside, but hoped the zombie horde wouldn't reach my villa. Beyond that, there was nothing I could do. This new year, due to the turbulent times, I felt no joy. After eating the New Year's Eve dinner alone and cleaning up the leftovers, I opened a new book. Just like last year, the book remained on the title page until nightfall. Suddenly, a familiar roaring sound came from outside, and I rushed out with a belated joy on my face. As I stepped outside, I suddenly paused, frowning. I turned back to grab my binoculars to look outside, and when I saw that the person in the car was not Lewis, I immediately closed the villa's high-voltage electric gates. To save electricity, the villa lights were off, and I observed the people in the car from the shadows using my binoculars. He looked familiar. He was the same underling who had come with Lewis to collect debts before. He was the one who had gruffly carried down those 2 buckets of red paint. When I saw him get out of the car, I cocked my handgun. Surprisingly, after getting out of the car, he didn't approach my villa. Instead, he raised his hands high, and when he opened his palms, I saw a glossy little chicken inside, proudly raising its head. Its sesame seed-sized eyes looked disdainfully at the foolish humans around it. It was clear it was pampered and well-fed. Considering there might not be a third person in this apocalypse absurd enough to raise a Rudian chicken, I opened the gate, separated by the high-voltage wire fence. The underling and I stared at each other. He said his name was Thomas, a trusted aide of Lewis. Then, he showed me the tokens Lewis had sent with him, a Rudian chicken, an apple, a tomato, and a toad. It seems Lewis really did manage to raise those tadpoles. After showing me these items, he carefully packed them back into his bag like treasures. I was somewhat curious about why Lewis had sent Thomas, but then, Thomas did something that stunned me. He took out the familiar unwritten ledger that had always been in Lewis's hands and tore it to shreds right in front of me. It was as if the already tenuous connection between me and Lewis was completely severed. He then looked up seriously and said to me, Lewis's exact words, "Dead or no, 001, Armani, your debts have been fully paid. From now on, there are no further ties." After that, ignoring my dumbfounded expression, he turned and walked away. Seeing him about to leave, I lost my composure and, forgetting about the high voltage, started to chase after him. Thomas turned his head in shock and exclaimed, "Slow down." I wondered how he knew the layout of my house. It reminded me of the last time I was delivering something to Lewis. He had reacted similarly. Suddenly, my mind was flooded with countless pieces of information. I asked him, "Where is Lewis?" Thomas's lips tightened, and with a sorrowful look, he replied, "Lewis is dead." I was silent for a couple of seconds, my tone complex. Do you think I'm stupid? He muttered under his breath. Not stupid, just naive. I responded with a puzzled, and said clearly, I don't believe what you're saying. Gritting his teeth, Thomas insisted, I'm telling the truth. Armani, Lewis is dead. Stop waiting for him. As he spoke, Thomas looked about to run off as if chased by dogs. There seems to be some misunderstanding, I said. I wasn't waiting for him. Caught off guard. Thomas suddenly stopped. He turned around furiously, looking at me as if I were a con artist. Despite being the one who started it, he now seemed infuriated. Angrily, he said, why wouldn't you wait for him? Do you have any idea what kind of women Lewis could have had with his status? Even the high-class socialites and top female celebrities at the base are all over him. He hasn't even spared them a glance. And you know why. Because of you. What kind of spell did you cast on Lewis? Always those little chickens, ducks, yes, and that toad, even gifting him a toad. Had him enchanted, delighted for a whole day over such an ugly creature. Saying this, seemingly unable to contain his anger, Thomas pulled out the toad from his bag and thrust it in front of me. I couldn't help but turn my eyes away. Thomas grew even angrier. You can't even stand to look at it, yet Lewis treasured it. Do you know the base is overrun with marsh chickens because Lewis never let us eat them? Someone who secretly ate a few was assigned to lead the search team for a week as punishment by Lewis. I really didn't know how to respond to that, but it didn't stop me from grinning ear to ear. Seeing my reaction, Thomas seemed to regain some balance. He straightened up and shared a lot with me. As he was leaving, he said earnestly, Armani, sister-in-law, I'll call you sister-in-law. Could you wait for him, please? From Thomas, I learned a lot. The first thing was about Anderson and Tiffany. After scaring them off with a gun that day, I never heard from them again. I initially thought they had fled elsewhere for refuge. However, unexpectedly, they died that very night from electrocution by the high-voltage fence at my villa. That night, the noises I vaguely heard in my dreams were Anderson and Tiffany getting electrocuted, and Lewis having someone dispose of their bodies. Additionally, the occasional rumbling of vehicles near my villa was explained by Thomas, who said that Lewis had people scheduled to clear the zombies around the perimeter of my villa. Not just the zombies, but also anyone coveting my villa would be secretly dealt with by Lewis's men. Moreover, I have never really taken out any high-interest loans. All of this, since I entered that black market, was nothing but a carefully crafted excuse by Lewis. Suddenly, many details I had previously overlooked flashed through my mind. When I was searching for the black market, it felt as if someone had been there waiting, guiding my steps. Whenever I needed diesel, I would coincidentally find it. The various equipment I sourced from the seafood market, which was good value for money, surprisingly all came through official channels. Additionally, in my previous life, when I went out alone to find food, there always seemed to be a barely visible presence watching over me. I wasn't sure if these events were connected, but I decided I would confront Lewis in person to get some clarity. Winter this year was exceptionally cold and remarkably lengthy. I used 3 times the amount of firewood and electricity compared to last year and added several layers to my plant and poultry greenhouses. Despite these efforts, my poultry and plants still suffered some damage. Every morning, I would find frozen dead chickens or vegetables. Sometimes it was chicks, other times fish, or even cabbages. Even those that didn't die looked wilted, huddling together to stay warm. Looking at the lone winter-sweet flower proudly standing on its branch in the garden, I secretly hoped that this winter would pass quickly. Fortunately, by May, the weather finally began to warm up. I noticed a significant decrease in the number of zombies after enduring the long, harsh winter. In my previous life, experts had not yet figured out the cause of the zombie transformation. However, through 3 years of combating zombies, people had gained some experience. Cold and darkness slowed the zombies down, and the cold made their sense of smell dull. It was speculated that after an extreme and prolonged cold, zombies might just go extinct, with the zombie virus remaining buried forever under the deep snow. When that time comes, people would welcome a spring full of blossoming flowers. I was somewhat hopeful, wondering if what I didn't see in my previous life might happen in this one. After a long, harsh winter, the garden I had painstakingly maintained for over a year was nearly destroyed. Thankfully, I had purchased a large quantity of seeds in advance. After clearing the completely frozen roots, I started a new round of planting before the arrival of summer. It was a tremendous task, taking me 4 whole days to complete. Due to the severe winter, the entire seasonal cycle was disrupted, and I could only rely on my experience to plant the seeds at the right time. After planting, time seemed to relax. I moved a lounge chair into the courtyard, sat down with a book, and quietly awaited the sprouting of the new seeds. Recently, I have been hearing loud explosions coming from the center of the city for several days in a row. I am too far from there to see clearly. Even with repeated attempts using a telescope, the layers of buildings still blocked my view. While organizing the warehouse, I stumbled upon a drone that I had picked up from a seafood market long ago. I tried to operate it, but it wouldn't work due to a drained battery. After some rummaging, I found its charger. As it charged, I watched nervously, holding my breath. When it was finally fully charged and operational, I couldn't help but smile. I'm admittedly clumsy. I remember when I first got my driver's license, my driving instructor earnestly told me, "Armani, once you get your license, lock it in a safe. For the sake of humanity, never take it out again." When the drone first took off in my hands, it was shaky, hesitant, and unsure. After several spins, jumps, dives, and circles, it managed to fly in a straight line, albeit after accidentally clipping half the brain of an innocent bystander zombie. The drone's maximum control range was 7 kilometers, which was too short. From my villa to the city center, however, through the drone's camera feed, I discovered that the loud explosions I had been hearing were actually humanity's counterattack against the zombies. The areas reached by the drone were almost cleared of zombies, and now the fiercest battles were happening in the city center, where the zombies were most concentrated. It felt like victory was waving at all of humanity. When I retrieved the drone, my emotions were so stirred that I couldn't calm down for a long time. A week later, one early morning, I was abruptly awakened by loud noises coming from the city center. The fact that I could hear such a commotion even from my location suggested a grand scene in the city center. I had a strong premonition that the apocalypse was over, at least in my city. In that moment, my eyes welled up with tears, feeling fortunate. I also felt somewhat lost. That day, I sat alone in my vegetable garden all day, sensing my unusual mood. Even the usually carefree Dada couldn't help but waddle over and look at me with its nostrils. It pecked me. I pushed it away, and said sternly, "Don't disturb me, I'm thinking." Watching me seriously daydream, Dada jumped into my lap, and we basked in the sun together. As we sunbathed, I began to feel sleepy, in a drowsy state. I thought I heard a familiar lazy, dragging voice from outside. "Open the door." I suddenly woke from my dream, and Dada, falling to the ground, looked bewildered. I turned my head directly towards the door, almost burning through the door panel. I didn't know if it was a dream or reality, and I stretched my neck to listen, but this time, I heard nothing. I chuckled self-deprecatingly. "Armani, you really do look like a spoiled, complaining wife." Lewis was right. I never learn. I had never loved Anderson. Agreeing to his advances was merely due to loneliness and a desire for familial warmth. I had long realized that he was involved with Tiffany, and I wasn't angry. In fact, I was relieved as it gave me a legitimate reason to reject his physical advances. Not understanding why I suddenly fell into melancholy, enveloped by a heavy mood, Dada was a bit bewildered and squawked, "Ga." The next second, "Armani, are you expecting your duck son to open the door for you?" I suddenly stood up with a start and swiftly pulled open the door. Seeing the person outside through the wire mesh, I remained silent, observing my stubborn expression. Lewis suddenly laughed. "Armani, you've really outdone yourself. Not only have you managed to gain weight since we last met, look at what Lewis is saying. To be able to eat is a blessing, and keep out of fairy business." Lewis had lost weight, so much so that he looked almost unrecognizable. His hair had grown a bit too long, and his stubble seemed prickly. Even through the door, I could smell the strong scent of gunpowder on him. He must have been involved in the recent crackdown in the city center, and it's very likely he had just returned from the front line. Was he here to share the joy of victory with me? After observing him for a while, I couldn't help but blurt out, "Lewis, how could you let yourself go like this?" He frowned at me, as if wondering why I suddenly decided to speak up. We stood facing each other in silence for a while, the atmosphere turning strange. My big toe couldn't help but start fidgeting. I'm leaving, he said. I suddenly got angry. I questioned him. Louis, do you like me? He was taken aback, and before he could react, I went off like a wild horse that had broken free. Whether you like me or not, I'm laying it out today. I like you. He seemed completely bewildered by my words. For the first time, I experienced the joy he used to feel watching me act foolishly. After a while, he came to his senses, chuckling. Armani, these are not the kind of words a girl should say first. It seemed like there was no one left in the world who mattered to me. I told him, a fairy gets who she wants. I kicked open the iron gate, and driven by my fierce aura, he respectfully stepped aside. Approaching him, I looked him straight in the eye. This was the first time I stood so close to Louis. I said, don't leave today. After that, I grabbed his hand and led him inside. He let me pull him a few steps, and just as we were about to enter the door, he suddenly grabbed my wrist. Surprised, I turned to look at him. He looked at me seriously and asked, Armani, do you understand what it means for you to say these things to me, a grown man? I replied, of course I know, Louis, you've come this far. Are you backing out at the last step? Weren't you the one who started this? Hearing my words, Louis laughed, a mischievous smile spreading across his face. The next second, he took charge, pulling me towards the house with a sense of urgency. Once inside, the cozy atmosphere of my house enveloped us. It seemed like Louis and I finally snapped out of our reckless moment, both of us feeling awkward just standing there. I tried to act natural. There's water in the electric heater that I filled up this morning. You go take a shower first. I'll fetch my dad's old razor for you. Oh, and maybe trim your hair. It's almost covering your eyes. Louis hummed in agreement. Then let me fuss over him. Considering my limited skills as a Tony hairstylist, I simply gave Louis a buzz cut. In the mirror, I could see Louis sitting while I stood above him. His gaze was intense, making my hand tremble as I touched his hair. This time around, I didn't have many men's clothes prepared, so I handed Louis a simple white t-shirt and sweatpants. You go shower first. I'll cook, I said. I fished a fish and some shrimp out of the pond, took some stored vegetables from the cold storage, and used the pork that was left over from yesterday. I prepared sweet and sour fish, blanched shrimp, scrambled eggs with tomatoes, and cabbage-wrapped meat. I also caught 2 chickens and stewed a pot of chicken soup. While I was halfway through cooking, Louis finished his shower. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw him wearing the clothes I gave him, leaning casually against the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, head tilted, and legs crossed. He kept watching me, distracted. I accidentally added an extra spoonful of salt as the rice bubbled away. I finished cooking the chicken soup, prepared the blanched shrimp with dipping sauce, and seasoned it with scallions, ginger, garlic, soy sauce, steamed fish soy sauce, rice vinegar, sesame oil, hot oil, small chili peppers, and green onions. Mixing everything well, I softly announced, dinner's ready. Louis naturally came over and began serving the dishes I had prepared. When I brought out 2 bowls of rice, he was already sitting there waiting for me. At that moment, it seemed as if Louis had absorbed the mundane essence of the world. After dinner, Louis told me a story. He spoke of a man who grew up in the mud, working his way up as a minion in the black market until the apocalypse arrived. The man then helped the black market boss establish a base, which was rife with chaos, violence, and cheap human lives where the living were no different from the dead. Women would trade themselves for a piece of bread, men would betray their wives and children, and friends and relatives would stab each other in the back for survival. When the tension became unbearable, the man would sneak off to a deserted area to smoke during supply runs. One day, a girl appeared in this sanctuary. She was always out gathering supplies, rushed and vigilant. It's worth mentioning that her driving was consistently terrible, often causing the man to worry for her. Over time, the man realized this girl was living with another man and a woman who betrayed her by having an affair in her absence. He knew his interest in her had crossed the line of mere curiosity. In such chaotic times, a man of his humble origins wasn't supposed to dream of love. He cared deeply but had to withdraw his feelings. One day, as usual, he went out for supplies, feeling a sense of foreboding. He was ready for his end, but when he saw the girl being pushed defenselessly into a horde of zombies, he snapped. The gun that should have targeted the zombies was turned without hesitation towards the treacherous couple, and in that moment, He was overwhelmed by the horde. Later, I asked him, Louis, why didn't you come to find me from the start? He replied, Armani, a country must come before a home. In this life, I want to give you a home.